We are just waiting on the tape to be all set before we start. We're starting a little late, I
You can order
think.
it online or else, like I said, I took mine right up at
Okay,
the American,
you're all set?
right at their bookstore. And if you can't get down there, just let me know, because I'm free a couple of days a week. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the May 14th meeting of the Board of Sewer Commissioners. If our clerk Sue would give me a roll call. Just see.
Okay. Present would be Commissioner Gilberti. Here. Commissioner White. Here. Commissioner Bonk.
Here?
Chairperson Jordan.
Here.
And Clerk Susan Sweeney. Here. So all commissioners present.
Okay, our first order of business is to approve the meeting minutes, our last regular meeting of May 7th. Did everybody get to go over those meeting minutes? We can take a few minutes and read them if you'd like. Or I can read them aloud, whatever the board's pleasure is.
I can read them aloud since I...
Yep.
Do we have any preference on that? I think they're going to read them on their own.
They look good to me. How we doing, Jim? All set? Okay. I make motion that we accept the minutes as written.
Okay, we've approved, we've made a motion and seconded, so we've approved the meetings of May 7th, the regular meeting. Our next order of business is citizens participate.
We need to vote on it. Motion was made. and seconded.
Oh, that's right, we need to vote. All those in favor of accepting the minutes?
Aye.
Pardon me, I'm new at this. So that was unanimous, 5-0-0. That's why I have you here, Donna, to help me. We have a citizens participation segment. Is there? We're going to do those in unfinished business since they weren't on the agenda, Jim, if that's okay with the board? Okay.
It's fine.
Citizens participation, is there anyone here to speak to citizens participation? If you would come forward and state your name and your street address, you don't have to give us the number, but speak into the microphone. We'd love to hear from you.
Yes, my name is Ann Ames, and I live on 219 Sandwich Road. I am a 30-plus year resident there, my husband being a lifelong resident. We have had problems in the past. We know situations happen, but this is the worst we have ever had. I do have a question about air quality. I do have a question when I see the word toxic. Little nervous about that. And also in regards to the deodorizers that are supposed to be forthcoming. Again, that's just nothing but chemicals. Granted, we need to mask the problem. But I have concerns about that also. Another thing is, on Sunday, my husband received something from Mr. Campina, but it's regarding odors, what are we doing? And it has what they are effectively doing. That was received, again, on Sunday, May 10th, but I have no idea when this was actually typed. There is nothing on there. So, I mean, it could have been typed a week before we received it. I have no idea of knowing that information.
Okay. Ms. Morrison?
Hi, I'm Sally Morrison, and I live at 4 Linwood Avenue. First, thank you all for being on the Sewer Commission, of all the openings on all the boards. I mean, this wouldn't be my first choice, so I really appreciate that you all stepped up to the plate. This issue that Anne is referring to from, some of us have our sewer calendars. I too am a 30-plus year resident, and I have 2 dogs, so I walk like 2 and 3 miles. I've gotten a lot of input from a lot of different people, and some of those people have lived here, like Anne said. I mean, there are at least 7 residences that have between 25 and 60 years living exactly in that area. So there's a history, they've heard everything, they've smelled everything, they've done everything, they've lived through things. And I'm one of those residents, and agree with Anne that the circumstances that when I started noting, this is day 27, it started April 18th. The concerning thing for me when I went to do my usual send my emails, inquiry emails, looking at last year's initial one, because I saved them, using your pun, I am a little anal, is that they never ever started this early. Subsequent that, we found out there are certain conditions that precipitated what happened to us. But one of the concerns that I have, and the people that I've been talking with have had, is that in the past, if there's something that happens that's, you know, really out of the extraordinary, that we'll be notified. And for this, procedures needed to be enacted to mitigate the issues. And when that happens, we all get letters. The only way we got information is that we called to complain, and I'm hanging on that word you sent to me about being proactive. I really appreciate that, also that, you know, in less than 12 hours from getting my email, you turned around and we put this together. Some of the residents, it caught them because it was quick, and I said, do you want to wait a month? And of course they said no, and I'm just happy for the opportunity that we can meet with you. We know none of the issues that we have won't be addressed at this time. Hearing you already talking, we're trying to compile. We're doing it by email at this point because we all share with each other. People are doing their research and sharing with each other, and to educate ourselves, to move forward, again, to be proactive so we don't wind up in these situations, to better improve the communication. And it's not just about the abutters, which it's well beyond the abutters now. There are reports from Minot Forest School, that's a first. It's a good swath of Sandwich Road. It is on the streets on the other side of Sandwich Road. But it's also about every ratepayer. So it's like the 3 Rs. It's the ratepayers, because to deal with these issues, the ratepayers will be fiscally responsible for that. And then it is the local residents, and it is truly a quality of life. There were 2 weeks prior to Mother's Day to like the day after Mother's Day that literally you did not go outside at all, nor did you open your windows. And it was 80 degrees after the horrific winter, which in part contributed to this, but we're still living in a way with that river. But we did not know day to day how to plan. You didn't know if you could have a Mother's Day. You didn't know if you could say the week before to have your family come in for a barbecue. There was no way to plan and prepare for that because the smell literally was that offensive. And it is 24/7. There are people who have said they're up at 2 o'clock in the morning and they can't sleep. And as well as, you know, all day long. So it's not mitigated at any degree or whatever. So if there was a way we can do that to be responsible to the ratepayers, the residents, and to the river. The river is a priority. We live there for that reason. So we don't want anybody to lose out. You know, one doesn't rise above any of the others. So we would like to better, and using you and the press that's here as a forum, is for people to be able to get together so we can have meetings. This was a good thing that there were a lot of other things I wasn't even thinking about that people also brought up. And obviously that list needs to be prioritized, from the residents' view to be prioritized, how we can tackle this, and in some kind of working meetings or whatever to deal with things, to be proactive, to be able to do that. And we also, you know, really want to be better in a communication loop. Multiple times the suggestion has been, I got the call yesterday, was it yesterday? The day before, it's like, you know, you're going to have, you know, your water's going to be brown. So if there is an issue, to do the same things for the neighborhoods, just to let people know, to say, you know, and if it's, and the smell of this was so, you can't, it's not a smell, it is a stench. It's not, and it's hard to explain to people, it's not like somebody in your neighborhood that their septic went. It's not, in fact, some of us would like do that Pepsi test, put several glasses of different things, low tide, sewer at different times of the day, a failed septic, you know, a dog that lost it in the house, whatever it is. We could literally, we're like experts that say, this is this, this is this, this is this, and this is this, is to let people know, because people were really scared. Because the way it was is, what are we breathing in? You know, the odor kind of rules the day, but because they don't know what it is going into everybody's lungs. If it's not, to allay people's fears is one thing, and then added to that, which Ann said too, is it's dealt with different ways, chemically right into the basin, because the bad boy is the basin. The 2 basins is to deal with it that way. When there's deodorizers, I got told by a family today that certain deodorizers trigger asthma that requires going in for major treatment because the noxious smell, you know, you can't, and that's, I mean, but that's an attempt to try, is to figure out a way to best work out, because we're kind of all there. And then my last concern in reading the paper, and that's just what made me go, and if anybody knows me, they know I can go, is that, as my neighbor laughs back there, is that we're dealing with this, and that was then this was at the end of last week, when literally we could not open our doors, and literally even with your windows closed, it was in your house. And then reading proposals of expanding the treatment plant. And for several years, it's gone through, when there are issues, to say, let's get this in order, and if that's in order, and the test is not now, the test is July and August. And if July and August is a go, we all accept that smell is gonna happen, but not 27 days.
And for some reason, I thought this $20+ million expansion was to relieve all of this. That has not happened.
Was that the $20 million expansion that happened in 2005, or the repairs? Yes. That was done by Camp Dressler and McGee, and I have to say that although I'm under the impression, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that they made some guarantees that there would be no more odor. But they should never have made that guarantee, because we cannot ever, with a sewage treatment plant, get to a zero odor policy, as much as we would like to.
Well, thank you, because you're probably the first person who has actually ever come out and said that.
Well, that's what it is. I want to thank you both and others for, oh, did you want to? Okay, for coming before us, because we do view this as a very serious issue, not only as far as the abutters are concerned, but the ratepayers going forward. You know, we want all sides to come together and have a serious debate, and this will be the beginning of it, I hope, of a very good working relationship. And as the chairman, I just want to say I want to apologize personally for the events you endured over the past few weeks. I know they were intolerable. There were mitigating circumstances, but that does not lessen what you had to endure. And should we have notified you prior to treating the basin and that there was the potential of strong odor and a prolonged odor? Yes, we dropped the ball on that. Did the level of the odors rise to a health hazard, a significant health hazard to your health? No, they did not, and we should have notified you of that as well.
And how do you know that from?
We have, there are, along the perimeter of the plant, air quality monitoring systems in place. So those alarms would have gone off, and those are to protect the workers and the people who are at the plant. Those alarms did not go off, although it was an intolerable, noxious, horrible odor that probably gave you a migraine headache and sent you gagging to the bathroom. It did not pose a significant health hazard. But we should have informed the abutters about all of this ahead of time. We feel that the buck stops with us, and we own it. We've learned by this mistake, and we will make sure it doesn't happen again. And I know Jim has something he'd like to say.
My question to you, you mentioned earlier that you people are all in contact, email. Now, could we get a list of those emails so we can begin the process of responding?
We can certainly ask, but, you know,
Certainly appreciate it.
yeah.
And I believe, Marilyn, you said you were going to do something in the hall related to that?
Yeah, we are going to compile a comprehensive list. I spoke with Guy about this, email addresses, phone numbers, and we'd like to partner with you for this information.
Oh, absolutely.
And we'll all get together.
And we were going to then, like, reach out, as I said, the two papers are here, that we will put contacts in the paper, like we did in our neighborhood, but we certainly, it was only, the evening before last, I think, where I heard about Minot Forest and that area. And of course, there's the people that are literally on the other side of the river. And it literally is, for this series, there were some intents that everybody was dealing with it. But it seems like when you got your congrats from Ann, because Ann is so good, she wanted to give you something positive.
She was very nice, yes, she was.
Meanwhile, I'm getting in from the down the street from some other, oh my God, this was the worst day ever. So everybody's in their own little world, and what we're trying to do is open that up to say, okay, and every day, how are we dealing with, and being out in the street and talking with people today, it certainly was present today. Certainly not to the level that it was, you literally in the morning, when you'd go to open that door, you opened it with trepidation to go, that first smell. And it really sends your day down the toilet, literally, of, that it's it's oppressive. So, you know, and again, if we, knowing beforehand and knowing how long it was, knowing that it wasn't an injury, there's kids that live there, there's a daycare center that's there. And I'm sure every one of those parents who drops their kids off, you know, they don't live in that neighborhood and they don't know. So it can be a scary thing to say what's going on besides being something that's noxious. So if we can share both lists, if we could, you know, and if you guys could get up some knowing kind of the perimeters to do some kind of robocalls, which is done other places, and just to, you know, one less thing, it stinks, but you're not worrying about it because your two kids are out in your backyard.
Right.
You know, just those kinds of things are, in your word, proactive.
Proactive, and that's what we are attempting to be. Donna?
Yeah, first of all, I wanted to thank you both for coming in today, too. And I have two tenants over on Ladd Ave, and I was chatting with them this week, and I was getting the exactly what you had to say, too. I think the communication is the big thing, whether we can get them on an automated phone message or whether we can get, and definitely share information with the emails. And I think, you know, I'm all for that. Because I'm sure that, I know I can learn from you because you've been living with it too. But none of us want to see this, including the staff. So policies and procedures for handling something like this, I think it's great. I'm an all for policies and procedures person. So I think, you know, we should probably take a look at that, Madam Chairman. But I mean, you know, we'll talk extensively. But I please invite you back to any of our meetings for input, because I think you can do nothing but help us do our job. Thank you.
Through the chair. And again, we thank you for coming, and sorry that you had to endure that aspect. And I'm just going to ask for your patience in some aspects of it, because it's a learning process for all of us. But also, you know, under the harsh winter circumstances, we still don't know a lot of the detriment that has happened either to the plant or generally. You know, you still have, you know, snowbank waste in places that needs to be cleaned up. I know of where some of the snow dumps were, that they still have waste from those that they didn't realize was going to be plowed in. It's being cleaned up. So I think just generally, if we can just afford everyone a little bit of patience with how the process goes, you know, we certainly understand that we need to communicate that way. But there was very unforeseen circumstances, and I love the fact that you have a calendar. So, you know, maybe
There's a lot of anal people here.
I think that's marvelous, and that maybe in that sense, then maybe when we run into a winter where we suddenly have a long period of extremely cold temperatures that might kill off the bacteria that are supposed to be doing their wonderful job. That we don't like to talk about bacteria, but it does do good things for us that way. That, you know, maybe you look at the calendar and go, cold winter, you know, I'm the kind of person that if you email and said, is it going okay? Do we think it's going to be okay? That we can go ahead and talk to Guy about that and say, what are we thinking? Are they going to die? Are we going to run a little problem? So we can keep you notified that way.
Right. Well, one of the anal people here actually kind of did a survey of the water treatment plants and how they fared in the winter in the area. So, and also did like trying to, and a nice with just kind of educating oneself of what it is. Part of the issue we'll go back to, which was one of the promises, is that the basin was to be covered. And so you got all that snow on that basin, you know what was going to happen, and it became anaerobic, and that's just what it was. But the promise was, and this is 4 to 5 years ago, that everything would be enclosed. And so if it's an enclosed system, and you know, and it's not my business, and that's not, I just wanted to find out and had questions from the neighborhood. I already knew and started telling people, don't be afraid of this, because people were really concerned and didn't know, you know, what to do. And so there are situations that can help mitigate that, because that was our number one, because one of the two basins, you could throw a baseball from the backyard and it literally can land in that basin, because it's that close. It's that close. And I know, I'm sure arrangements are made, like, that's the last, the basement of default, but the basement is, that basin is also being used. One of the things I particularly want to know is how often that basin is supposed to be, is being used. Granted, weather happens, but is it also is happening, summer is a huge thing, is everything really able to be handled the way it's supposed to be handled going through, or is something having to be put, it's too much, and it's going to impact the river, which perfectly understand, but I think if some of the things that we were promised, and maybe shouldn't have been promised, or things that were going to happen that didn't happen, is there's no cap, and so then that same kind of winter, I know it's kind of an act, but it could be the same thing. It could be, 5 inches of rain, and it doesn't have to be the winter to say if that's open and can't be handled. There's different, there's different reasons, and, this winter just was hellacious, but I think if maybe some of the things that the ratepayers were told, and that's just not the abutters and the neighborhoods beyond there, is that maybe some of these things proactively, I beat that sucker to death, proactively in the future can help mitigate that so you're not, buying and dumping and chemicals and consultants or whatever every time that happens. Because for us, we know we're a small group of people that are dealing with it. And again, we all know periodically there's going to be, not that you go out and gag, but periodically there'll be, whatever. And that's the fact of life. I don't have a mall sticking up in my backyard. So, different people have, different things they have to deal with. And I want to say that the residents are, I think, very, very reasonable, open-minded, and want to do something, and they're not like, seethe. Mother's Day, if anybody drove down, that was sad. That was really sad. You couldn't even cook your food out and bring it in. You wouldn't want to be out there. So, and that's that communication that you don't, that's even not knowing is worse. It's like, is this going to be 1 day, 2 days, 3 days? And it just meandered on. So, and now that we're getting to the summer, that really needs to be rectified, because you have families coming from all over that are staying, to, grandma's 75th birthday or whatever. That literally will put the, that's a done deal.
Right.
And it also is it's a besmirch on the town when they're trying to bring people in here. So you have people coming and then going home and say, where we were, and God, it was gross.
Because you do have people that just drive by and comment on it. There were people that were working on a building there that asked my husband, what is that god-awful smell? It's embarrassing.
And
to
then
say
those
the
people all
least.
go home.
Yeah.
And then if somebody says, oh, you want to go down there for a week at the beach, even though they don't know the distance, but, it's like, I don't think so. So even though we're a small area, there's domino repercussions economically as well to other people that don't think they're not, they have their own septic and their own world. This doesn't impact me, but in a way, a little bit it impacts everybody. It impacts some people more than others. But I'm positive. I think we're going to...
Could we have an update as of what's happening as of today?
Well, would you like to give that update, Guy?
And I was also wondering when this was actually written.
That was presented at last meeting for the sewer commission.
So that was
May
May
7th.
May 7th.
Okay, thank you.
The update to this second, the basin is,
Yeah, I saw a picture of it.
I sent you a
Yeah, you
picture a
did.
while ago that was,
I got it.
I do,
as of
yeah.
right now.
I was
It's a
gonna
little
print it
lower
too.
than this.
Yep.
So the basin,
Thank you.
the basin is probably a foot from being empty. We hope to have it empty tomorrow. We ordered some pump trucks in to actually wash it to the sump and to finish pumping it out, and then totally bleach it. The front basin is offline, the back basin is online and is covered with the pods, so that's covered, and so we're mitigating those odors. The basin that we are cleaning was offline, and it froze over the winter and remained offline, so now we're trying to clean it so it'll be ready for next year to go online. We have the misters up at the EQ building. They're actually up and spraying. That was installed actually, I want to say today is Thursday. Up and running, I would say Monday morning it was up and running. Over the weekend they installed it and we put it online Monday.
And
So
where is that
that's at the
located?
EQ building.
Okay.
At the EQ building, at the perimeter of the EQ building, there's misters, they're there. I think I showed Mr. Ames when they did work over the weekend. They weren't running when he came by.
Right.
They're absolutely running now. So we're pretty close to being complete. We're hoping to be totally complete by the end of the business day tomorrow, and that'll put that basin to rest. That basin we'll see next spring, it'll go online. Usually we pump it over the winter. This winter we just weren't able to do that, so I apologize for that. We were caught kind of short when it froze. And that's where we are right this very second. As far as the basin goes. So again, we should have that mitigated by the end of the day tomorrow.
So are any of those misters in the direction of where Sandwich Road meets like Linwood and further down to Ladd?
The misters are trying to blanket the actual air direction of the basin itself. So what we're trying to accomplish is the air comes off the hill up to the neighborhood, it mixes with the odor counteractant to try to minimize some of the odor. So that's specifically to the area prevailing winds is what we're working with now. So that would be, I would say prevailing winds southwest in the summer, probably out of the northeast. Today they were all over the place. They're out of the northeast in the morning. I have a recording. We have a weather station records the wind direction. I could provide that for the board, but it was all over the place. It just really switched completely. So everybody got a good spraying today. It just kind of spun around. I can show you that from 0 to 360 degrees. So we try to put it in the prevailing winds. To do the entire perimeters, the amount of nozzles and I don't know, I guess at one time they were around the entire perimeter.
They were on the
one time.
fencing.
Yeah.
And why are they no longer?
At that time, they were there just before me, but they were there for when I came, I've never seen them there, but they were for the sludge. There used to be a sludge, I guess, dump over there.
Yeah.
And so I guess they put them for the sludge dump. Once they removed the sludge dump, they weren't, they'd never been there since I've been there, so I'm guessing that's what they did when they upgraded the plant in '25 to remove nitrogen and phosphorus. So the upgrade was for protection of the river, and that's why they upgraded. So now it's biological nutrient removal facility opposed to just BOD and those type of things, as I understand it and what I'm reading. So that was the intent of the upgrade, the $23 million upgrade. And that's where we are right to the second. So, and we're still pumping now as we speak. And so that's why we're going to hit it first thing in the morning, and the pump truck is rolling. We're trying to get in the plant. It was 1 million gallons we started. We're trying to get in the plant around 110,000 gallons a day. So it's been a long process. Pump clogs, we try to get in. So it's been a long process. So day before yesterday, we started pump trucks. We hired pump trucks to start moving it out and taking it to New Bedford. So we're disposing over there just to expedite the process.
Madam Chairman, may I ask a question? Can I ask a question, Guy?
Absolutely.
How, we got caught short with this basin this year. How can we prevent that this doesn't, we don't get caught short? What can we do or put in place to make sure that at least this doesn't happen? I mean, I know something else is bound to happen, but
We'll try.
Cover it.
That's a good question.
can we cover it? Can we cover it?
Cover it. We looked at a fiberglass cover about 3 years ago, and it can be done. It's just quite extensive. I believe it was $4 to $8 million to do a fiberglass cover, and we can do it because we got to put odor control system, you got to put air removal systems, biofilters, and so it can be done. And then they worry about the snow load. This year's snow load, I don't know if it would have handled it because we wouldn't have designed it for the snow load we saw this year. This was astronomical, probably one of the worst in my short 60 years, and maybe others haven't, but it's been the worst. I myself talked to the engineers from all the plants around, talked to the Department of Environmental Protection, and every plant in our area lost nitrification this winter. Every single plant. and they're all struggling. So that's from the Department of Environmental Protection. Falmouth, Chatham, Cohasset, Taunton, Brockton, and that's what we found out. So we all struggled. What we can do, what I'm thinking is we bought some aerators, and they make them for the mariners, and so maybe we can float them, and they plug in and just throw the water up. And so maybe if we can keep the water moving, then it may keep it from freezing. So we're going to look at that technology. So we'll look at many different things, trying to keep the water moving so it doesn't freeze. I had clarifiers freeze this year. Never happened. The center of my clarifiers, which is a constant movement, froze. So I mean, I don't know what I could have done different. We think about it. We lost our water lines for the plant water. We lost our main water into the building. That froze. Had to replace this winter. So I don't know. What I could have done for all these things, and I'm racking my brains trying to think what I could have done different. I'm pretty good at the armchair quarterback. I struggle during the heat of the storms. We had storms every weekend. We'd clear the snow, and it would snow again. Trying to get the pipes to thaw them. It was just a horrendous winter. So it's been, for me, a very sleepless winter and continuing. So I'm just hoping to get the summer so I can grab a good night's sleep. But we'll do that for you. We will put the.
I'm sure of that, but the way I'd like to look at it is, hey, if my
I'm
mother,
sorry. Let me just put this off. I apologize. I thought I had it off.
if my family lived there, I would want to know that the town was because this isn't something new that's been going on with the odors at this plant. I mean, it comes out on a regular. Over the years, I don't know how many times I've read about it. And I just think, I know we've got the 3 R's that we have to be concerned with, but my first R would be the residents, because, if there's something that can be done, let's look at it, and let's look at it as if we lived there. I mean, we want people to enjoy the same quality of life everywhere.
I agree.
And I know you do, and I know you do.
I really
and I know you
agree.
do.
We've looked at everything. I lived there myself. My parents lived there. My father's 88. He has congestive heart failure. My mom's very sick. I do. It bothers me. Last summer, they had issues having cookouts and stuff. It bothers me too, ma'am.
Yeah,
Very
I'm
much.
sure it does.
My wife has Meniere's disease.
Yeah.
I definitely have concerns too. And I'm trying my hardest. And I think we're looking at modern technology. And some of it works, some of it doesn't work. But I want to say this. Over the years, I'm not saying we're where we need to be, but we're making progress. And that may not satisfy, but we're getting there. Maybe one day we'll get to where we need to be. We can mitigate odors majority of the time. Or maybe that it's minimal impact. We're striving. This winter was the worst I've seen. It is the worst spring I've seen and the worst odors I've experienced. And so I agree with what the neighbors are saying. I totally agree. And it just got out. Once we started turning it, when we lost the impact to the bacteria, we turned it, and it just blew me away at the same time. So to call before, I had no intention of turning it. It was the biologist who recommended to turn it. We turned it, and it was horrific. And so would I have done things differently? If I had known, absolutely, because I didn't know, I did what I thought was best at the time to get that basin empty without impacting the process. And so it was crazy. It was crazy for me and as well as the neighbors. And I apologize. It was no intent to say, okay, to heck with the neighbors. That's never our concern. To heck with the neighbors.
Nobody thinks
no,
that.
that's not our concern.
None of us think
I
that.
No one
understand.
thinks that,
No,
but
I
we're
understand.
just trying
Yeah.
to make sure it does not happen again.
Me
This
too.
because there's been a problem since that plant was put into place. I remember my in-laws talking about,
1971, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I
And-
agree.
it's just been an ongoing problem. And we seem to have a spell where we were all thinking, okay, maybe, we're making progress. And then this happened and you feel like you just went completely backwards.
And I felt after all the money we spent, I wasted my time. I agree with you. I have no less feelings
There's a lot of
than you
money.
have. I have no less feelings. But the money we spent on the podsies, we show you the reports, we have reduction of odors. And this was an aberration, and certainly we feel bad. I feel terrible. I mean that. But it wasn't planned. It was intended. I never saw it coming. And I never saw the winter coming. My gosh, when we were in the middle of repainting our clarifiers, all of a sudden we're shut down. We were in the middle of replacing our roof. We shut down. Those things we didn't plan at all. And it just caught us, and so
Yep.
we're gonna try, I thought, and the problem we have is, we have to do all our winter, all our work in the winter. Because we have a permit from April to October, I cannot take anything. The plant was built just to exactly what we needed. There's no redundancy, or there's no, if I had 3 more basins, then I wouldn't have to worry about it. But it's exactly what we need, which may or may not be the right way to go. But anyways, so to take a piece of equipment off between April and October, I can't do it. I just cannot do it. So we try to do it in winter, and this winter we just didn't get anything done that we planned on getting done. So again, it just caught us, so I apologize.
Well,
May I take a stab at the perfect scenario? The perfect scenario would be that we would not have as much infiltrate to have to put it in the EQ bins, because we would be able to handle more coming in and processing it faster, and you would have the ability to keep those basins empty pretty much 24/7. So in our next part of our meeting with our capital improvement plan, those will be some of the areas that we're gonna start looking at, is how can we, what things need to be refixed and replaced to limit some of that infiltration and step up the process so the plant can handle a little bit more and maybe keep the basins emptier faster. Does that sound like a summary in a nutshell of the perfect,
Yeah.
the perfect
Yep.
picture? So,
We had a 500,000
So-
gallons a day that we
Right.
never got.
So-
It just,
so-
and at temperatures that were really, really
right, so,
lower than we're used to. So
Mhm.
anyways, I agree, that's part of the capital. I agree
so,
with you.
so the next presentation on the capital improvement plan, we'll probably, as we went through and read through, as I went through that, it looked like there was some good suggestions in there about what we might have to look at and other ways we can handle some of the situations.
Thank you.
so just to allay some of your fears going forward, I want this to be a very proactive and personal approach for you people to come to us. We'll tour your neighborhood if that's what you would like, but I would like to work with you very closely, and so that we can maybe do a reverse 911 call. We are putting together a calendar so that you will know when the repairs or maintenance are being done. We'll have that on the website. We'll also send it out to all the abutters and anyone else who feels they would like to know. And we're going to try and schedule those in the colder months when the windows and doors are closed, so there'll be less of an impact of odor. So we are changing some of the way the policies will be done, and certainly the policy with respect to handling the abutters. My email is available. I'll give it to all of you. We are setting up a sewer commissioner's email as well through the town, so you can, whether it's ratepayers or non-sewer users, whoever wishes or has something that they'd like to discuss with us, we're more than open to discuss it privately or at any of these. We'll have citizens' participation at every meeting if something crops up in the meantime. And I do want to say that, again, I want to apologize. This was an anomaly, and it caught everybody by surprise when the biologist said, turn it. We never expected, last Thursday when we understood that was going to happen, we never expected the prolonged odor or the magnitude of how bad the stench would be. We should have notified you, and in the future, with this list that you and I and the board will compile, and it will stay with us. It will not be open to anybody. I will make sure, I'll guard it with my life, that we get in touch with you ahead of time. There may be an incident when we have some type of thing that, an event that happens quickly. If I have to knock on your doors, I will. But we'll try and look into a robocall system and a reverse 911, which will get to you immediately. So I know it doesn't help to say I'm sorry, other than it ruined your Mother's Day, and you've had a long history of this. But this board is looking towards transparency and working with the community and to improve this. The one thing, and Guy he followed the protocol. He did exactly what he should have done. And once he realized the odors were as bad as they were, he took extraordinary measures to have that liquid trucked out to New Bedford. They are a bigger facility, and they could handle the volume. And that particular EQ basin, we could not allow it to go into our plant. It would have compromised the integrity of the plant, and by the same token, the river as well. So we did follow the protocol. Unfortunately, it produced that noxious odor. But I do want to reiterate that it was not a health hazard. And we will look into misters and any other coverings or whatever. We will be diligent in looking into things to control the odor. But I cannot guarantee a zero odor ever.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
Maybe
you.
we'll have an outdoor barbecue sometime this summer. Come on down.
Before you leave, I'd just like to make one comment. I appreciate you coming and everybody you represent. Have you generated a comprehensive list of all the issues you have? Because I've learned tonight there are other issues besides the
yeah.
odor.
No,
Can we have that list?
No, because what I had said, from going around and letting people know, there were things that they had concerns about. I mean, my head was, there's a lot of things. Some of it I remembered. Some of the stuff was even today, which I said I can't deal with, is that we wanted to send out to all the people in the neighborhoods, and we want to be clear that it's not just the abutters. There's a lot, and we did not realize how extensive the area, that perimeter is now, is that they can be part of, and we're happy that, I'd rather them direct to you, and even if it's on your page and something happened, it's one day, things happen. Actually, it's a different word you say, it usually happens. But if you just posted a note up there to say that if people know, they can go right there and boom, what their question is, or go, okay, that's it, it's, it's today, whatever. Just for people to know is a huge deal, and that's kind of where our first kind of issues were lying, that nobody really knew what was going on, and I had said, and I have a big mouth, and and I would go and check things out and then try to tell people, but it's not we shouldn't be going and telling everybody, nor do we have the knowledge base, and nor is it appropriate for us to tell everybody. But for us, we think it's appropriate in a place they feel comfortable to say, you got questions, you got concerns, you've got suggestions, you've got let's get a list going, and then the neighborhood can prioritize from their perspective and say, this is what we have, and present that to you. And you look at it and say, what's realistic, what is the priority, whatever. And it might even be a matter of certain people might say, I'll work on that with somebody. It doesn't have to be like, things can be divided up if that makes it, easier. And to start to deal with some of those issues and concerns, because it's a financial as well as the smell and the river. It's those 3 R's, and to cover all of them. And it's also, add another one is, it's, the respect for the town, because people, if they were in our neighborhoods in the past month and went home, unless they have a relative that they sort of like, they might not be coming back, because it really was bad. It was really embarrassing. And we felt confident, like I said, from 20 to 60 years, it wasn't like, because it's been better. That's what we can say. It's been better what's happened. It wasn't like our noses got unadjusted. Because we lived in there when we would have a barbecue, and we thought everything was hunky-dory, and people come to the barbecue and say, what's that smell? And we'd go, what? Because we got adjusted to the lower levels. We all knew, and those of us contacted each other right away and said, I don't think I've ever experienced this before, did you? And then we didn't know how, like I said, didn't know how long it was or whatever. But anybody, and literally, which was the first when I would be coming home from work, if I was in the passenger seat blindfolded, I know when I hit Sandwich Road. And that's pretty sad.
Well, we're going to work on
Yeah,
all of this.
yeah.
And I will be in touch with you personally. You have my email. We are also going to have a sewer commissioner's email. We are working on that calendar, as well as the list will be very beneficial for us. So I will contact you both personally, and we will get this ball rolling.
Absolutely. And again,
Thank you.
Thank you all for
Thank you.
stepping up for this. It's not,
And if you own stock in Yankee Candle,
Good tip, thank you.
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Again, I'm gonna do this real quickly. I'm Dave Wharton, I live on Lat Ave. I'm fortunate, I've been resident of Wareham for 15 years, I moved away, and came back with my wife and moved back, we've been here less than 8 years in the neighborhood, so I'm not as seasoned as Sally is. But I travel quite a bit, and I call my wife every day when I'm traveling, and she's been mentioning this thing about the odor for the past 3 weeks. And you made a statement that concerned me a little bit, and I just wanted to just be a little negative about it, but you told me that it was not toxic and not harm to anybody, because your air purification systems. That's not I caution you, don't make that statement again, because the air purification systems are built for people who are relatively healthy, who work at the plant, take it in. If someone with an immune system disorder, or has health issues in general with lungs and person, anything can be toxic and set them off. My wife has that situation, and both times she's been severely sick, and she's sick now. I just came back from Virginia today. I pulled in at 6 o'clock, she goes, you gotta go to the meeting. She can't get here to the meeting. She's sick. The last time she got sick, we had the same problem with this odor, the strong odors. So people get sick by it. So don't tell me that it's not toxic, it wasn't harmful to anybody. It harms people, and that's my concern. Not just for my wife, but for anybody in the neighborhood, the kids who play there and everything else. Kids who have, lung problems, it's not good. So if you make a statement that says it's not harmful, and someone does get sick and they can prove it's because of the odors, it's a whole new can of worms. My concern is, for the families and the kids who live there, and I'm fortunate. I guess I'm fortunate. I travel. I don't have to put up with the odor. I wasn't here for Mother's Day, thank heaven. I guess because it was pretty bad. And my wife even told me that. So our concerns are that I know things happen. I know he went through a lot. I'm just campaigning with situations down there, and you do the best you can. And we know things happen.
Okay, well, I stand corrected.
So that's all I'm saying at that point. Just be aware that it does affect people in a certain way. And we'll do everything we can to help you. And we are understanding. I have to talk to other neighbors, and we do our best to understand.
Yeah, and we want to work with the neighbors, not in a contentious fashion. We
Right.
know you have
Okay.
serious problems,
That's
and that's our job, just to try and work with the neighbors, and we want to do that.
My name is Bobby Austin. My husband and I have lived on 5 Linwood Avenue for almost 18 years. We raised our kids there. And like Dave said, that's my biggest concern. It doesn't pose a significant health risk, but it is posing a health risk.
Okay.
That's my concern. That the strong odor when it comes through, it does. It works on your stomach. It's not just, oh, this is gross, let me get out of here. Sometimes you're waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're shutting your windows as fast as you can, it's still coming in the house. It's vicious, it's a vicious odor, it can turn your stomach. There were times that I thought, what am I gonna do? Should I grab everybody and take them to a motel for the night? That's a horrible way to live, horrible way to live, in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, when your whole family's gotta get up and go to work the next day. When you've been up since 3 o'clock in the morning, now it's 6, okay, everybody's getting ready for school and work. It's a horrible way to live. But it is, when you get those really strong odors, forget about it. It's horrible, absolutely horrible. And I just wanted to make that brief, put it out there that health risk, that is really concerning to me. I know that there's been times that I was having consecutive headaches every day.
Oh, they'll give you a headache.
Because I couldn't sleep at night, because even with the windows down, you just can't sleep with that much of an odor, so. It would be nice if someone could drive through the neighborhood when they're getting it like that. That would be nice, so you could see what we're dealing with, how it affects your head, it affects your stomach, makes you sick, that's all. Thank you for listening.
You're very welcome. Thank
Okay.
you.
Mhm.
We take it very seriously, and we will work on all of the issues, and I will get in touch with
Thank you.
Mrs. Morrison. Okay. The next sewer business that we're going to move on to is the report on the capital improvement plan, which ties into your issues, by the engineering firm of GHD. So if you fellas would come up. And if you'd identify yourselves into the microphone.
My name is Mark Drainville with GHD.
My name is Russ Kleekamp with GHD.
Mark, could you spell your last name for me?
It's Drainville, D-R-A-I-N-V-I-L-L-E.
Thank you.
I'll give you the business card on my last name. It's
Okay.
probably easier.
I think I have your business card, but I'll take another one. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm going to be presenting a draft capital improvement plan to you all. I think you've gotten an electronic version of the report. Be happy to provide hard copies too if you need any of those. It was my intention to bring a copy of the presentation too, and in my attempt to be sustainable, I had a double-sided copy that I printed a single-sided, so I'm missing some slides. But I could provide those in electronic version to you all after the meeting. Just as a background, as I'm going through the presentation, one of the major things that you look at when doing a capital improvement plan is you think about what the age of the infrastructure. All infrastructure has a life expectancy, whether it's school buildings or wastewater infrastructure. And mostly what comes into play are mechanical systems. Those have the shortest life. Buildings you can expect to last 50 to 100 years. But when it comes to mechanical operating systems, HVAC systems, electrical systems, pumps, they typically have a life expectancy of around 20 years. So that's just something to consider as we go through this presentation. So I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of the infrastructure as it relates to the wastewater. Then I'm going to talk about a criticality analysis. I'll tell you why we did that shortly. And the intent was to do a 20-year capital improvement plan, but then we did a very detailed 5-year capital improvement plan. The shorter the duration, the more detail you can get, but the 20-year still provides some useful information going forward. So as far as the town infrastructure is concerned, there's 57 miles of gravity and force main, there's 43 pumping stations. You have a wastewater treatment facility that has a 1.5 MGD capacity, serves about 60% of the town, and there are portions of the system that are over 45 years old. When it comes to mechanical systems, that's very old, but masonry and concrete, it's still young to some extent. We looked at a couple of things with this project. What we had to do is come up with a priority, which projects are most important to handle early on. When you do a project like this, you might find a large collection of things that have exceeded their life expectancy. But you have to come up with a way to prioritize those because it's not practical to do them all at once. So we came up with a way of prioritizing projects, determining project costs, coming up with a draft financial plan, a timeline for projects, and a justification for the projects. And it includes, there's 3 main components. You have the wastewater treatment facility, you have the collection system, and the pumping station. So those are the 3 main components. These are some of the general tasks that we looked at, and we're all the way down to the bottom one. by producing the draft report, and we're collecting comments to come up with eventually a finalized report. There's a big difference between the collection system and the pumping stations and the water pollution control facility. The big thing about the collection system is you don't know what the condition is by looking at it. It's all buried. You have to investigate what that condition is. So that's a piece of information that the town has to continue to gather. All right, their guy has started that process, but we don't really know all of the details with regard to that. So the plan going forward with regard to the collection system has more to do with further investigation and determining what the condition actually is. When it comes to the pump stations and the water pollution control facility, those are all, for the most part, visible assets. So we can ascertain what the issues are, what the age is, what the condition is. And many of those assets are mechanical systems, and they have exceeded their life expectancy. So as I explained earlier, when we first started this, we came up with a collection of issues, mostly because of the age of the infrastructure. And so we needed to come up with a way of prioritizing based on criticality. And I'm going to go through a basic discussion of a criticality analysis that we did in this project. There are two main components: the likelihood of failure and the consequence of failure. The likelihood of failure is a relatively simple concept. It really just has to do with how is the system performing and how old is it. So how likely is that system going to fail? The consequence of failure is what happens if that system fails? What are the consequences? Are there health and environmental impacts? Are there damage that might occur? And I'll give you some examples. I know this might be a new concept, but I will give some examples of these things. This is a simple table that, after coming up with different classifications for the consequence of failure and the likelihood of failure, it helps you to prioritize all the way from low priority to high priority. So a system, for example, you could see a system that is old and in bad condition, and is very critical to the infrastructure, is going to have a very high need to address any problems. And I'll show you that. I have two examples in your system that hopefully you could see that example. Something that you should keep in mind with your pumping stations as I talk through these. You have 43 pumping stations. Some of those pump stations are very, very critical because they support many other pumping stations. And I'll show you this example here. The red box in the middle is the wastewater treatment facility. And I know you can't read the names of the stations, but that really doesn't matter for this, okay? I'll go through a couple of examples here. So this pump station that I circled here, you can see there are 5 pump stations that actually pump into that one. So that pump station that I circled serves an area, and it's bringing in flow from 5 other stations. So in reality, it's really, there's 6 areas that one station serves, okay? Another station is down here. This one, very similar, only there are 10 stations that pump into this one. So you could see, a pump station that's way out in the outskirts of the system is serving a single area. As you make your way into the inner portions, these systems become very important because they're supporting much, much more of the town. And then this pump station here is supporting over 15 stations.
Plus the hospital and other major areas.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. So yeah, this is just to show you how it's not just the station itself, but it's a very important piece of infrastructure because there's other facilities pumping to it. So I'm going to show you 2 particular pumping stations in the system and how the criticality analysis was done for them. So the first one is the Narrows Pump Station. It was built in 1970. The mechanical equipment there is well past its design life, its useful life. The sewer shed that it serves includes the hospital and the fire headquarters. These are two pieces of your infrastructure that are considered critical. I think that's probably obvious to you, but there are industry documents that classify critical infrastructure, and those are two that are. And then in addition to those things, it's also has 17 pumping stations that it is supporting the flow from. The Apple Street pump station is on the other end of the spectrum. It's a brand new station, just built a few years ago, so it's well within its design life. There's no critical infrastructure, at least as defined by industry documents. I don't want to convey that it's not an important one, but it doesn't have the critical infrastructure defined by an ASCE 24 document. And there are no pumping stations that pump into it, so it's only serving its own area. So these are two different ends of the spectrum with these two stations. So with regard to the narrow station, the likelihood of failure in this case is a 5. It's at the highest end because it's well exceeded its design life. The consequence of failure is also very high, and it's because of what it serves and how much additional flow is coming in, how many additional sewer sheds are coming into that station, as well as the critical infrastructure. So this ends up being a very high classification as far as criticality for this particular station. It's probably the most critical one in your system. The Apple Street one, the likelihood of failure is very low because it's a brand new station, so that gets a classification of 1. The consequence of failure is relatively low with a 2, and that gives it a very low classification. So the need to address anything there is low, okay? I showed you 2 examples in the system. What we did in looking at the 3 different parts of the system, the collection system, pumping stations, and the water pollution control facility, is we divided each of those up into units. The pumping stations and the collection system were divided up into 42 units. The wastewater facility was divided into many more units, and the reason for that is because at the pumping stations, for the most part, the age of the infrastructure is very similar. Okay, at the treatment facility, there's a mixture of ages there, and so we subdivided that into many more units so that we could more properly address the fact that there's different ages of equipment there. You can see there's an example here of how this is for the wastewater treatment facility. For a single portion of the treatment facility, you'll have varying risk ratings at the treatment facility. Once you have classified the various components of the system, then you then need to come up with a plan for how to address them. The typical age ranges for addressing very high critical projects is 0 to 5 years, 6 to 10, and then 11 to 20. We broke up the 0 to 5 years because there are some very critical portions of your infrastructure that they just kind of floated to the top and felt that they really needed to be focused on early in this. So we did assign costs to the stations, or to the all the different components of the system that are recommended for addressing in one way or another. Pumping station projects costs were based on in-kind replacement. There are other things that you could do at your pumping stations. You're in the process of doing a comprehensive wastewater management plan, or you're in the process of amending your current one. That's something that can impact your pump stations, and that's an unknown right now. So if you might sewer additional portions of your town, additional flow would be coming from portions of your town that aren't sewered right now, and that flow could end up in some of the pump stations that you have. That's an unknown right now, and so that wasn't considered in this project. So we looked at in-kind replacements, replacing what you have right now. The water pollution control facility, any issues that are at the facility were based on in-kind replacements. the difference between that and another kind of replacement would be upgrading a facility as a result of a change in your permit. So all of this is looking at replacing kind of what you have. It's not looking into the future. That would be the subject of a different kind of a project.
So when you say in-kind replacement, then I noticed in the report, you said some of the equipment that we had was so obsolete that there was no way we were gonna actually find the pieces all over again. So you're talking about just its capacity for what it can do in an in-kind,
Yes.
not changing so that it, okay.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct. Yes, and we weren't considering increases in capacity
Okay.
because that's not known at this
So
time.
in-kind, we're talking about capacity, not in-kind. Of Now
Correct.
we're gonna have a new technology that's gonna do it.
That's correct.
Okay.
In that particular case, it's a very good example. There are pump stations that are an obsolete technology. We did look at the cost of a replacement in that case.
Okay, I just
Yep.
needed that clarification
Yep.
when you said
No.
in-kind.
Thank you for that question.
Yep.
And then, as I mentioned earlier, the collection system, at this point, we put allowances in to investigate, to further investigate, and to address issues that are discovered in the collection system. But it's a little bit of a guessing game, I'll have to be honest, because that investigatory work has just started. So the last few slides that I have show what I will call the technical results of this. Okay, there's another piece of this CIP, and that is incorporating it into the rates. So this is the technical results, and there is another very important piece, and that's incorporating and working to make it a reasonable thing for the town to address. So I'll call this the first step. The next step is to work to get into the rate study. So based on the criticality analysis, this shows the dollars that should be set aside to address issues that were discovered as part of this report. So you could see the costs are grouped, as I talked earlier, in 0 to 3 years, and then 4 to 5, 6 to 10, and then 11 to 20. They're all average costs for those periods of time. When you look at, typically projects like this are financed over a 20-year period. Wastewater infrastructure is typically done that way. And so we looked at, if you were to approach it in that manner, what would the debt service look like over time? This is a hard graph to show, and I'll tell you why. It's because this is a 20-year debt service. It looks like when you go beyond 20 years that the costs fall off and you're done. This is a plan to kind of recover, to kind of bring your infrastructure back and to modernize it. And then there will be a point where you should have some kind of a level funding to have a continuous renewal and replacement program, so that you don't end up in this situation where you have very old infrastructure. So this is showing a 20-year plan and the payoff for that 20-year plan. But it doesn't go beyond 20 years, if you understand what I'm saying with that. This is just showing the payoff beyond 20 years and not work that's required to maintain beyond 20 years. Want to make sure. Does everybody understand that piece of it?
Mhm.
Okay, because we could have truncated this at 20 years, but then we wanted to make sure you saw that there are payments that would go beyond that. Okay. So we, in the report, we came up with a detailed recommended 5-year CIP, and it kind of walks through a year one where you do a little bit more of an analysis on the stations, what I would call an engineering study that would look more closely at what's the capacity that's required for those stations, to see if any of the stations are either currently have issues with capacity or may in the future need to be upgraded to increase their capacity. That's really the first step in any kind of an upgrade, is to do an engineering study. The other important part of year one that we saw was there's a handful of very high criticality areas. I think it was 6 areas. The next category is high, and there were a large number of those, more so than we felt could be dealt with within a short period of time. So we felt that in that first year, it would be important to further investigate those stations just to see which ones rise to the top in that grouping, if you will. There may be some that, due to either maybe the CWMP work, that might need to be accelerated ahead of some of the others. And then the other years are looking at design and construction of the what is developed as part of the year one plan. And then year 4 and 5 would take the high criticality areas and start working on those. I'm sorry, I said high. The high criticality areas, and start working on those areas. Looking at the 5-year plan, year 1 is just kind of study and investigation type work. And then you can see the cost increase as more money is needed for construction and design. But this is kind of the breakdown of the cost needs on a year-by-year basis. And on a 5-year, just looking at 5 years, it's a lot more manageable, I guess. Just looking at funding this over a 20-year period, it's looking at a little bit over $2 million a year to address the first 5-year period. Projects like this are fundable through the Department of Environmental Protection. They provide 2% loans. There's a priority list, but in recent years, everybody has received funding. So that's what we base this on, is a 2%, looking for a 2% loan through the state. So some of the next steps, as I mentioned, the report is in draft form. We're collecting comments. We've, actually just yesterday have collected some comments. We need to incorporate Bourne and provide some input on Bourne's contribution to some of the stations. After receiving comments and coordinating with the rate study, this CIP could be finalized, but I think that's an important part, is to make sure that the coordination between this and the rate study happen, so that they're not separated documents. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Do you have the draft in front of you? Okay, so I
Oh.
did have a, and just in some of the questions in terms of why some of the ratings received they did, was just curious on the clarification. I got the LOF idea that, the age has a major condition of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then performance assessment. In some circumstances, I saw that your performance assessment, the performance issues were just, there was no performance issues yet. It received a rating, and I'm just trying to think of one that I had in here.
Okay.
I'm looking at the distribution boxes and the meter vaults risk value on page 12.
Yeah, so the aeration basin, the performance issue has to do with splitting the flow to the aeration tanks. And so that it's not an age issue there.
Okay.
It's performance issues can arise from anything from it could be a failure of a piece of equipment. It could be something that's just not working, flat out just not working well.
Okay, so
okay.
even though it has an LOF of 3 and a COF of 2, it still receives, it's in the high rating scale based on the evaluation that it could cause potential issue from those?
Yeah, hang on a second, I just want to make sure that.
Because all the other ones on that page
three.
received, were 3s and 2s, and it received a medium, and I was kind of like, well, how come that got a high if those were
Yeah,
medium? So maybe it was just.
let me explain that one. So what
Okay.
we did on in that particular case, there was an issue that is noticed by the operations staff at the
Okay.
plant, and that's so I'll make sure we clarify that so that's more obvious. Yeah, so there are several things at the plant that rise to a higher criticality than their age would indicate because there are performance issues, and I'll make sure.
Right, and
Yeah.
what the result is if it fails, so, because then what you're saying is that would create a major issue if that component was to fail, okay.
And also, if something's not performing well, then it's almost the equivalent of something that is failing as far as its life expectancy, if you think about it in those terms.
Right.
Okay, so.
And then I had a question, I noticed frequently throughout the report, it says in terms of the age of the building, and, you know, and most of it was architectural and structural concerns that you had said. And it just said, you know, recommends another condition evaluation to be done. So that's what you're talking about in that year one study too, is to take a look at some of those things and reevaluate them from.
That's
and
right.
That's not done by you guys, that would have to be done by a structural engineer, someone else to come in and say that the concrete of this is getting weak and whatever else, or.
So it's unlikely that a condition evaluation would find problems with the structural integrity. Okay, it's going to be more things like a roofing system doesn't have a long. I think a roofing system has a 20-year life expectancy.
Okay.
You know, maybe there's just maybe some of the. I'm not an architect. The soffits at the where the roof is connected to the structure are
Right.
failing.
So it'd
Just
be like a home inspection.
something like
So
that.
you're looking like a
Yeah.
home inspection.
That's
that,
right.
You know,
But-
the roof needs replaced and you have some rot here and some
Yep.
termites over there. So
Yep.
you're talking about, okay.
Yeah. Any engineering.
If I may, structural integrity, we look at Rebels Pump Station, and we look at Pinehurst Pump Station. We have wet wells and dry wells that are metal on top of concrete, and the concrete and metal is
Mhm.
completely gone.
Yeah.
And we challenge the integrity of the stairs that go down 30 feet that the guys are using that are totally rotted out. So that becomes structural, because, you know, and so there are structural issues with the migration of concrete and metal in some of our pump stations.
Okay.
That's right.
Thank
Yep.
you for that clarification on that. You have some Alka-Seltzer or something you'll be giving us as we read through this more? Because when I looked through it, I was like, wow,
Yeah.
there's gonna be dead in the water on this one. Little Tylenol to go along with it or something.
You know, I will say this, that you're not alone in this situation, for if that helps. There, you know, in the 70s and 80s, EPA provided a lot of funding for wastewater treatment facilities as a result of the Clean Water Act, and it was very attractive funding. It was as high as 90% grant, and it's there are a lot of these facilities built at that time, you know, that are now coming back and needing this rehabilitation. So you're not alone.
Guy, can I just ask too, and maybe you guys can address this as well, some of this may actually tie into that coastal zone management grant that we had talked about from the last aspect. too, or
Yeah, actually,
yes or no? Okay, great.
I should have mentioned that. So that is a separate project. Okay, we deliberately did not include that
Right.
as part of this consideration. We'll be coming back before you to talk about that. They're very similar, but they do deal with different issues.
Mhm.
Okay, but we will be coming back to talk to you about
But
that
there
other one.
might be potential finances for us to
Yeah.
kind of go out. I know we can't guarantee it, and we need to project out at $2 million a year, whatever, and the grants would be like, hey, that's great on top of that. Now that $2 million, it can be put aside for something else later on. But I'm just trying to, I always try to look at the cup being half full, so we do have that possibility of looking at some of that coastal zone management stuff we had discussed in one of the last ones.
Absolutely.
Oh, great.
And as Mark had said, to incorporate that, especially for grant money, to be able to move everything forward, because the more grants we get, the less money we have to borrow. And
Right.
so that's pretty important. So that's why
So
it's
that-
wrapped in.
There's that Tylenol I needed to take,
You-
so thank you.
Another attractive thing with the grants is when a granting agency funds something like a comprehensive study, for example, we did one for our town that identified 20 different stormwater outfalls. And then for the next 10 years, each year, it was, I don't want to say guaranteed funding, but extremely high likelihood if that granting agency funded the original study. So they'll basically be looking for you to upgrade. And I think the coastal zone management, that funds up to $300,000 per.
Yeah.
And you can, and I believe you can have multiple applications or multiple projects per town. So there's a definite opportunity there.
And one of the ways that it could potentially be used is, I'll give up an example of if, let's say there's an issue with a door at a pumping station, and that door has an issue where it's below the flood elevation.
Mhm.
Well, we could potentially seek funding through, right, so
Right, and
that's,
or if the rust of the door was so exceeded so
Right.
much that if coastal surge is gonna just blow the rust through,
Right.
then that would come under the coastal zone.
right.
And again, I wanna make sure I reiterate that, I mean, I've done grant at school, writing at school and everything else, that it's no guarantee. So you can't say, we don't need this $2 million. You can say, yippee, yes, skippy, we got it when we get it, and we can use $2 million for something else later on and put it aside, so, which is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Mark was very conservative because in his figures, he uses 2%, and there's opportunities to have 0% financing
Right.
if we pass some policies that talk about infill and things of that sort. So
Right.
there's other opportunities, and so conservative-wise, speaking of 2%, that's what we can prepare for. But there's a possibility, and if we do some more with it, we can get it 0% financing. So there's all kinds of opportunities that they're looking at, and we're going to explore. The USDA, we talked about, there's some issues there, we're gonna meet with them and see what opportunities. So because there's a lot of money, as you saw, and so we ought to find, if we can find funding, and we can lessen the impact to the ratepayers as we go. So that's part of their adventure as they go forward on this.
So that's our second Tylenol then, that's great. Can I just ask, when you're, in your recommendations of the years too, when you have your potential costs, that's the pages I have here of, I don't think they have a page number on it. The final chart where it says, the pump station at Springborn, what would be done is to replace some of the mechanical equipment. Those are the year one studies and stuff that you're looking at on these pages. Is that the- was
28,
that the
page
end?
28.
It's page
Yeah,
28.
project list, yep, okay, I'm with you now. I'm sorry, could you ask me that question
I
again?
just wanna make sure, I kind of briefly looked over these, but I didn't
Mhm.
wanna get into too much detail on it if it was not when you looked at the year one study, can you go back to the slide? Please? You had it listed out, you said that right there.
Mhm.
So these ones here in the 0 to 3, where it says allow for study and investigation and remediation, those are the costs right there that you're talking about.
Can I just look at it?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we put, these are allowances, for the study portion of that, exactly, yes.
Thank you.
And for your understanding, Ms. Sweeney, also Springborn specific, Walmart, part of their mitigation in building, set aside $100,000 to do any engineering study on Springborn.
Oh, great.
So we have that available, so that's pretty exciting too, because that takes away costs to research that particular pump station.
I'm not feeling like I need any Tylenol at all right now. Anyone else? Sorry. I really read this study. I looked at all the very high and the high priorities, and I went, oh, wow. So. Great. Thank you. Very comprehensive.
So now you're going to receive comments, and they are coming from us as well as whom else?
Comments would come from the board, definitely myself, some of the staff, as we go around with them, as to what we're seeing to incorporate into their studies also. And then they'll take that and they'll finalize and present that to the board, I believe, or at least submit it. I'm not so sure how they're going to do it, but the final will be presented. I believe it's,
One thing I'm wondering if you might want to do is before this is finalized, do you want to have the rate study consultant just
Absolutely.
took, I just so that these are consistent.
I think with your permission, Madam Chairman, the draft that we have, we should submit it to Mike so he can incorporate it into his rate that he's gonna present to you folks as far as the rate study goes. Because part of that rate study is to take the budget and incorporate that in to figure out what the rates are going to be set at. And so if he can take this and look at the projections,
Mm-hmm.
and then he can discuss with you folks as far as how much you want to commit annually, what's reasonable, I think that's important. I agree. I think that's very important.
So he'll be doing that within the next 3 weeks, or no?
I would say before
Longer.
that to get it to Mr. Schrader, because I believe Mike's gonna come here within
In
the next
3
3
weeks, right.
Yeah, and speak to you, so we gotta get it to him, so he has time to digest it, incorporate it, and present it. So we'd like to get that to him as ASAP to Mike, and then Mike can bring
So
some
will
to
the
you.
GHD coordinate with them, or will that go through you?
You know, I'm always involved, but it would probably be easier to, there's no loss in translations, to set Mike up with GHD to
Okay.
discuss
Yeah.
particulars, especially as they talk in the same language and maybe what this really means. And so Mike will have a better idea, so he does the incorporation. I think it'll be a better product for us.
Okay, so when this comes back, that'll be more or less set in stone. This is what we need to do going forward, and it'll be tied into the rate when Mike comes to apply, give us the rate. He'll have all the figures that include the capital improvement plan.
Yes, ma'am. I think that's the right way to go. So there's no coming back. If we don't do it that way, then Mike has to come back and refigure. And I think if we can do it all in the beginning, I think it's going to be productive for everybody.
Right, I agree. Is that the pleasure of the board? What do you-
Just,
I agree.
I agree.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, so what we're looking at is the proposal that it's going to be approximately $2 million a year over the next, in terms of that capital improvement, for us to just bring the infrastructure back up to where it needs to be.
It could be 2 million, it could be higher. There's some years that are higher.
Right,
There's some years that are 5 million.
right.
You see, so I
But there's
think,
some years when it's
Yes.
less,
that's right.
so.
And so I think the board will have, working with Mike, can pick a number in the middle of whatever you choose. We're spending $1 million now on capital improvements a
Mhm.
year, so we've got to that point. So whatever the pleasure of the board is, and we're doing that now within 596. So as you set the new rates, you can decide where you want to go and what the increase is incremental throughout the 20 years, however you want to do it. But I think you can make that decision as to what you'd like to commit to. But of course, with Mike's involvement and GHD's involvement, to help you make that decision as far as technical information. But whatever the number is, it's going to be comfortable for everybody. You know, there's a lot to do, and we want to do it all, but our pocketbook only lets us do so much. There's a reality of what we can do, and there's the dream of what we'd like to do. And so somewhere in the middle, we have to kind of figure out where we're going to go.
So if I'm just reading your projection right on page 27, that was the approximately, it's over $2 million, it's like $2.25 million. That's the number we're gonna submit to Ty and
Look at
Bond?
his chart. The chart that shows, you know the chart that was towards the end? You see that the first year, the commitment, and then you'll see that number escalate.
Yeah, so there's two in there. There's a 5-year plan and a 20-year. You know, if just as a starting point, we could look at the 5-year,
five-year one,
right? So that's the
That's,
page 27 is an example. That's the example that shows the financing piece.
Mhm.
Okay.
Should be year 2, year 3, I mean, there's some incremental increases there, so whatever.
yeah, so, I mean, I'm in favor of, we'll send what we can to Ty and Bond so that they can come back with as accurate of a rate-setting plan as they can present.
I think that's the way to go, and then you can finalize everything, at least to get it out there, something to discuss, and then finalize what the board feels we can do going forward. I think that's,
You need a motion, Madam Chairman, to forward this to Ty and Bond to tie it into their presentation?
I think so.
Well, I do make a motion that we submit the draft to Ty and Bond and have them tie it into their presentation to determine the rates.
Can I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Five, zero, seven. Okay, so what we will be doing is sending that off at your earliest possible convenience so that they have plenty of time, and so they can come back to us with all the pieces of the puzzle put together so we can come up with some type of a rate structure going forward.
thank you, Madam Chairman, members.
And thank you so much for getting us this
Yeah.
as far in advance as you did to allow us to actually go over it. straight line.
Yes,
It was
that was
good.
very good that we could be
Thank
able
you.
to see that.
Very helpful.
Appreciate that.
Very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark and Russ. Appreciate it. You know, I have a question. I wonder if, we should see, well, I guess we don't have to. He'll come and present it. If he has to come back, he'll come back.
Mike?
Mike Schrader,
Yeah.
how fast if he'll get us a draft prior to. I'll ask Guy, because the next thing, all right, the next, good night. Okay, the next thing on our agenda is the sewer superintendent's report. So, Mr. Campina.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Members, first thing I'd like to say is all that I'm going to say and we've done tonight, I want to thank Rebecca for the hard work that she's been doing, and she's been invaluable to me here. I got to say that she goes above and beyond, so I do want to thank her, and I want to make that note here. So, and I'll start with my. All right. One of the things I'd like to discuss here tonight with you is we had briefly touched upon the IMA. Mark talked about the connection between Bourne and the town of Wareham. In the IMA, the intermunicipal agreement, intermunicipal agreement between town of Wareham and Bourne, which is exactly 200,000 gallons per day.
Did you provide us with a copy of that yet? That agreement?
Yes, we did.
Okay, great.
So you have the IMA. And it's an
Okay.
extensive document. It talks about
yep.
what our responsibilities are,
It's in here.
how we base the pricing, and yes, so you can look at that agreement. And what I want to discuss is that every 5 years, the commissioners from Wareham and Bourne are to sit down, review the intermunicipal agreement to see if it's working, if there's changes to be made, and that type of thing. So what I'm going to ask the board is, we're in year 2015. We're in that 5-year. And so I would ask the board if you would like me to reach out to Bourne and start the dialogue as to when it be convenient for both you, the boards, to sit down and give you time to digest the document, and then to sit down and discuss it to move forward, because it has to be done every 5 years. So I don't know how much time you want. It should be out quite a bit because there's a lot to digest, but it has to be done 2015. So we're there. So I just wanted to make that now to start preparing for it.
I'd love to have some time to digest it and understand it before I sit down and talk to them.
I
I don't. I can be honest with you right now. I don't understand it yet.
No, I
It's a
understand that.
very
I want to start the dialogue.
Convoluted, yeah.
I
No,
want to get
absolutely.
it going.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I want to know more about our system.
Yeah.
And out of
So,
fairness
what do
to
you think,
Bourne
the fall,
too, though,
early fall?
they're gonna be in the same predicament
Yeah.
we
In the
are in
summer.
terms of their rate setting,
Absolutely.
based on what we agree with the IMA, so we
What do
kinda
you think
need
about
to.
the early fall? Like,
Yeah.
That's fine, early fall.
Yeah.
I just, okay.
Let's get through the summer.
Because there's some dynamics before then that we have to decide, to be perfectly frank, and I think we really need to vet through, because this meeting was set up, and there's the word selectmen in there. And at that time, selectmen were sewer commissioners, and they didn't delineate responsibilities. I think that we need to make sure we look into that delineation for responsibilities, so as we move forward, that you actually know what your responsibilities are. I'm kind of confused myself.
Yeah, the Board of Selectmen, we have to provide them with, for lack of a better word, recommendations as far as intermunicipal agreements, at least the way I read Article 11.
yeah, right, okay.
So that they will be,
The final,
I think they will be somewhat of the, although we
we need to educate them and
we
let them.
need to sit with them as well and find
Right,
out what
find out
they've
what
done
they-
and what they've done in the
Exactly.
past to make a good decision and what recommendations and
So-
work with them.
Just the last time they sat down was in 2010, and if you look at the sign of that document, it was that board of selectmen
It's a whole
/ sewer
different, it's a whole
commissioners.
different board.
Absolutely. So I don't know, they haven't been involved in any type of negotiation. So you're the first board that's going to actually
So
sit
we need
down
to digest
and
this.
talk.
We need to
Exactly.
digest that.
Yeah, so
Exactly,
Try and
I
tell
just
them what to
wanted to
do.
make sure.
exactly.
Did I say that?
And I think you're the one, the guy, you're gonna get
said
assigned
try.
to, you're gonna assign to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're gonna be
Sit
the
down.
liaison.
You're gonna be the, welcome.
You volunteered.
I'm going to have Susan right next to
He
me.
did, he did.
Wow. So that's all I wanted to bring it up so we can start thinking about it, because it's something we really need to
Yeah.
address.
Mm-hmm.
And for giggles, I could talk to our council to make sure. I don't really understand it, because were they acting as sewer commissioners or were they acting as selectmen? I don't know, because they had two hats. Board has two separate boards. They're sewer commissioners, are selectmen, but they separated it.
But they do, although we have some control over the policies and procedures here at the Water Pollution Control Facility. They are the negotiators
Correct.
and the final say
You read it right.
for the town.
So, okay.
So they they trump us, so to speak.
Yeah.
I believe.
I think you read it right.
Yes,
I thought that was in terms of labor, though.
No, yeah,
Labor
and
and,
labor.
but also in policy setting, and that would be an intermunicipal agreement.
See, and I'm glad you have a clear, so I'm not that clear on
I
it, so
don't
I'm
know,
glad
Jim,
you're
you
clear. I'm
don't
not clear.
agree? You think I'm all wet here?
I think we would set policies relative to the sewer.
Right,
Right,
just not labor.
just labor, we're not involved in labor.
We do not set policies regarding what the town will do. That's just like.
Yeah, and we don't set policies regarding labor issues.
We have nothing to do with labor.
Okay. I know.
But the IMA would be a sewer policy with
It's a
agreement.
sewer agreement, so that's what I'm saying, I'm confused. So then the question would be is then why would we get involved? Let's let selectmen handle it. If it's their jurisdiction, then we don't need to get involved with the IMA.
I think we
Then
need-
we gotta look
So
back
that's what I'm
at
trying to figure out.
the
Yeah, I
way
think
our
we
I've
need-
been on
yeah.
this.
and the way the charter is written, because the charter delineates
I'll read
their,
it again, but I thought it was our responsibility to develop.
I
develop,
Plan or an agreement.
I thought it was
and
they
then
have the
too.
right
present to them. They have the right of
review.
refusal.
Yes,
That's- I
exactly.
just want, yeah.
But we'll look at it again. I
Let's
read
look
that
at it
stuff.
again.
I've been reading so much.
Okay.
that-
So
So
set
I'll-
the conversation up with Warren for sometime in the fall, in
Yes.
either way, and then we'll just have to tell the selectmen we set it up for them if they said it's not your job, so we'll be like, then.
Okay. Because my responsibility is to talk to their, I've already started my responsibility to talk to their superintendent, if you will. We had a conversation. We talked about, they had some gas bills and have notified us, so we're talking about how we want to handle that. And I'm going to talk about a grease policy in half a second, but if we have a grease policy, they have to have a grease policy
Right.
because their product comes to us. So I've already started that type of dialogue as far as treatment goes and infrastructure and all that. I'm already there, so I know that we do it every 2 years. You guys have every 5 years. And the other thing I wanted to ask you, we have a grease policy, there's a copy of it in there for you, and we want to implement it. And so my idea was to have if you will, a sit-down for all the restaurant owners and businesses that deal with grease and review the policy with them before we implement it. And so I wanted to get your opinion and advice on how we should proceed. I was thinking of going to Rosebrook, I guess that new hotel there, and getting the conference center. And then bring in all the restaurant owners, invite them all there, and be there to even explain the policies to them, the grease policy, because it's a policy. It's been adopted by the sewer commissioners. It's a Wareham policy.
As far as I've seen on the policy, it hasn't been adopted.
The
Right.
policy's adopted.
There's no place I found that it's been signed off on.
Look on your,
I've seen, I got a copy.
okay, open it. On the back page, it's signed by the sewer commissioners. Well, I have a signed copy.
I'd like to see it.
You should have it. It should be signed.
Yeah,
It's a signed
on the
copy.
back page,
It's a
right.
policy, it's adopted, and
Page 3.
we're going to enforce it. The ones I just provided this evening,
The one you gave
they're
us
signed
today, Jim.
copies. It's a policy, it's actually a policy. And so that's what we're going to enforce. So I thought that instead of just enforcing it, it'd be wise to sit down with the restaurant owners, get their feedback, talk to them, explain to them why we're doing it, and then we can slowly implement it to minimize the impact to the restaurants. I thought that would, so I was asking the board if that's okay, if we should do that. I'd like to do that. Of course, the board's pleasure is what I'm looking for.
I think we should absorb it first and understand it before we take it to the restaurant owners. I don't know.
It's their, okay, that's fine, because it's a policy.
Because the only reason I'm saying this, I see another policy, a letter you sent to a funeral home, people who pick up funeral home monies. And I'm looking at it and I'm saying,
That's not a policy. We gotta talk about, it's not a policy, ma'am.
oh,
What-
okay.
yeah, what
Because I'm
happened
saying
is-
you can't do that.
No, the history of that is that we have an individual in this community that was pumping that forever, and they used to bring it to the treatment plant. One of our workers got spilled on it, and so we had to send him to the hospital, which opened all kinds of worms. It was a one-year treatment process. DEP gets involved and says, if you're gonna take that product, you have to have a pre-treatment program. So that started things. So I'm saying, no, you call us, nobody's gonna keep just bringing it anymore. So it was not a policy, it was like a statement of this is the way, the procedure that you're gonna handle this, because it's, the DEP, as long as we have a pre-treatment program, we could take the product. And there's only one individual in this community that anywhere that delivers it here. Been doing it for 30 years.
Well, the problem is, and let me just,
Mhm.
let me just express it. The problem is, when Chapman Cole and Gleason was built, there's an agreement that they had to have with a collector, okay? And I believe the collector is Mr. Smith. He signed on to do it, okay? And the funeral homes, this is something I learned too, they have an alarm on their little, thing that when it gets to a certain thing, it has to be empty.
Empty.
It's
Okay.
contained, it's right, because
Okay,
it's
okay.
enclosed.
So,
Yes, ma'am.
the poor hauler gets the call, you gotta get out here, it has to be hauled. And now you legally can't leave it in your truck overnight, you gotta get rid of it, right? So how, in the name of goodness, is a hauler supposed to give 24-hour notice? When the alarm goes off, and it goes to, and Mr. Smith, I mean, I'm just using Mr. Smith, because I think you're talking about the same guy I'm talking about.
Correct. There's only one that we have.
Okay, why try and make the guy's life
No,
difficult?
he calls, he has my cell number, he calls,
Yeah, but how do you
because
give 24 hours notice when he doesn't get 24-hour notice, and he's not allowed to keep it in his truck?
he has a maintenance program with them, and he does it routinely. If there's an emergency, we have an emergency procedure, and he calls me 24 hours a day, no matter what time, I'll meet him there, because that has to go to a specific tank. It's got to be handled specifically, and so that means we have to be there, we have to be notified. He can't just come dump it at will. And so that's why the policy is, you call us, let us know, we'll meet you, and we'll make sure that it goes into the right tanks and and that's what that was all about. Because it went into the wrong tank, we had to shut down the plant. It got somebody injured, we had to take him to the hospital. So we wanted to tighten it up, that's all we want to do, is to
Yep.
make it tight so we can protect everybody. That's the only intention.
Madam Chairman, I would just suggest that any policies that we're going to do, we need to understand them first. I mean, I'm out in the dark. I'm out in the dark, and I want to make sure whatever policies, all the policies that we understand. At least I'd like to understand them, that's for darn sure.
Was that a policy that
Well,
was
this
done by
was-
the?
It's an adapted policy, it's
this-
already there.
Adaptive policy,
But
okay.
it's an unreasonable one.
No, that's not a policy. I hear what you're saying, it's a procedure. And again, that speaks to his scheduled visits, because he does it routinely, he schedules it. He calls, I'm coming, and we meet him. That's been working fine. And the
But he
reason,
doesn't know when the alarm's gonna go off. They
And no-
call him.
and nobody does. What if I have a pumper who's pumping one of the rest homes, and they get an alarm?
Yeah,
They have the same thing, they got a schedule to come in, and so what they do is they call us, we meet them on the emergency.
oh, that's great,
We don't
but
charge
you
him any
can't-
extra.
But you can't give him he can't give you 24 hours notice.
That's the
is what I'm
norm.
saying.
There's a policy in place that you don't have, that's for emergencies. So an emergency has an emergency, because that's an emergency situation.
Mm-hmm.
He calls, and I'll get out of bed, and I'll meet him. And that's what we've been doing right along.
My only,
I understand.
yeah,
That's-
and my only thing is, any policy that we have, everybody needs to know what the policy is. Like the restaurant owners, they didn't know what the policy is. They didn't even know a policy existed.
Because it was only just.
It was just
only
enacted. It was
it
enacted
just
last July.
enacted.
And-
Okay,
And we
right.
wanted to
And-
wait, because,
And I just want to be transparent and
yeah.
educate
Absolutely.
the public.
and that was the idea of having a meeting.
And I want to
Instead
be
of-
their friends, I don't want to
Yeah,
be, because
Exactly.
we're all in the same community.
And that's what we're saying. That's why we don't want to just
Okay.
implement the policy. We want to
Okay.
talk about the policy. We want to
Exactly.
introduce it to the policy, let them
And
interact.
tweak it if we need to, and.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, exactly.
And that's what the meeting's all about, so we
So-
can
okay,
get
so-
feedback
Guy, what kind of time frame were you looking to set that meeting up with the restaurant owners?
in July.
Okay,
Because
because this is really only a 14-step
It's a-
policy. So in terms of us digesting it,
Excuse me.
He's from the restaurant
Why
business.
don't we set up meetings for the restaurant industry in July when we're supposedly a tourist facility?
I didn't agree to the July date, Jim. What I was just saying is that a date in that far in the future seems very reasonable, because this is not a long policy for us to digest.
And I have a question as well, Guy. Have they already received this letter, all the restaurants?
All the new ones have, the old ones haven't. At that meeting, we're going to hand them all out. The idea wasn't to say that this policy starts tomorrow. The idea was to say this is the policy that's been adopted by the town of Wareham. We need to discuss it. And you discuss it, so if they have comments, it's a good chance to get all their comments, and then we can go over the comments and then finalize that as it needs to be finalized. That's the only reason. Because the reason for the policy is we're getting tons of grease in our lines. And it started with the line coming from the crouton factory on Toby Road is plugged. and we couldn't even get a camera down there. So we have to address it, because the purpose of it is to have restaurants responsible to pump out their grease traps, so that everybody doesn't have to pay for the treatment, cleaning, or whatnot. That's the whole idea of a policy. And so it was enacted last July, and we thought fair to the people that closed down in the winter, we'll wait for the following year and then implement it. And all I'm saying is, instead of just implement it, we should have a time to sit down with the restaurant owners, tell them what we're planning on doing, and get comments from them to see how it can work and can't work, and then we can finalize the whole program. It wasn't to say, tomorrow you do this, it was to say, hey guys, this is what we're doing, what do you think? And then you have a night where you discuss, it's very friendly, it's open, we get their comments, they're in the business, and then we say, okay, great, now let's implement it, whatever day it's going to be, but we've had a chance to really vet it through the restaurant owners and through here. That's what I'm
They
saying.
should have tabled this for a year. It says effective immediately.
Yes,
Yeah,
it is.
that's what it
It's a
says.
policy. That's what I'm saying. It's a policy. Tomorrow we could say this is the policy. And I don't think that's fair. That's why I'm thinking we
Yeah.
should meet with the restaurant owners, explain it to the restaurant owners,
They
and
shouldn't
then
have
move
signed
forward.
it.
That's all I'm saying.
You should rescind it, but it should have been signed, it shouldn't be.
Shouldn't be signed. It shouldn't be signed, no.
Can I just ask you,
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
in terms of the capital improvement plan, I noticed one of the comments that was made too is that the nitrification filters keep clogging up too. Is any result of that, of the grease that's coming into the system, or?
No,
Okay.
it surprises because we had the manufacturer come in. Where the grease is an issue is it coats the aeration basin,
Yeah.
the obnoxious basin, gets on the side, very obnoxious odors, and also it's
Right.
harder to treat, so it
Right.
raises
Okay.
the BOD, it raises demand, the actual demand, so all that's the reason why we get rid of the grease.
Right,
So
okay.
we just, the policy is, it's a good policy, I mean, if you look around us and call it a community, everybody has a policy. We don't have a policy, we never had a grease policy, but that's part of standard operation as far as pre-treatment program. And so we have a policy, and it's a good idea,
We have to
but
do
I
it
just think we need to
retroactive.
educate before we
No,
enforce it.
I think we can only do it effectively right here. Madam
right.
Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we rescind this policy that has been instituted for the restaurant owners until we can get it, have the opportunity to meet with the restaurant owners, get their feedback, and come up with a draft that works for our sewer operator and our restaurant operator. I don't know how you wanna write that, but I want to rescind this right immediately. Because this is not a policy that, it shouldn't be in effect right now.
Can we not, just to
We
go
haven't
along that
enforced
route,
it.
can we, yeah, right, can we not, instead of rescinding it and having to, can we not just, can we vote now to not enforce it as of the policy shall take
Probably.
Yeah.
effectively?
That's fine.
Immediately.
And then that's exactly,
accomplishes the same
whichever way,
Same, right, I think just to
We wanna-
not ruffle a whole lot of feathers, if we just say, we're gonna say, we're not putting in immediately and maybe look at,
We're not
Right.
enforcing.
no, we don't want to. Do you agree with that as a restaurant owner? You used to be.
Well, if I
What
read
do you
this,
think?
this is a lot of work for me if I'm a restaurant owner.
Exactly,
How-
exactly.
All right,
How-
so-
What
how-
are you gonna do with the paperwork that they supposedly have to produce? Who's gonna handle that?
Well, you
What are
are,
you gonna do with it?
you are.
but,
Can I,
but,
Madam Chairman, can I say
Okay,
something?
Yes.
that's why we need to look at
Right
this.
now, Title V mandates that they pump their grease trap every 3 months. They're not even doing that in the town of Wareham. So they're not even following the rules and regulations that they're supposed to be following by state law.
Do they know that?
Yes, they do know that.
They do know that.
Well, the ones, yes, they do. It's been around since 1978.
It's immaterial how long it's been around. Do they know that?
Yes,
My
they,
question.
yes, they do, generally
Has a
speaking.
notice gone out from the sewer department to tell them that this is something that's required under Title?
That's what, this is what this is all about. We passed the policy, we're gonna get it out to them. That's why I wanted to have a meeting to explain to it. Yes, most restaurants are called by pumpers because the pumpers know, and they try to get them on a schedule. But let's be clear, it's costly. And so a restaurant owner says, why am I gonna do that? It cuts into my profits. But what he's not realizing is that it costs more to treat that product, so everybody's sharing. And I hate to use the word, but the regular homeowners subsidizing the business because they're not paying to get the grease out,
Right.
and they're putting it in there.
Well, now, wait a minute, I tend to agree, I agree with what you're saying, but I disagree with the way that it's being appropriated. I think that the only fair thing to do is to educate them and put it out and put them on a list that they get this. mandatory. You've got to do this every 3 months. And if we do have a policy, we better have a procedure to follow up to make sure that they're doing it.
It's in
And
there,
they need,
it's in
and
the
they,
policy.
and they need to have a hauler that they're contracting with, that we can
It's
spot
in the
check.
list,
We can
absolutely.
spot check,
It's in
okay?
the, absolutely. You're
But I
right.
wanna be fair,
You're
because,
100% right.
because we run our, this community is run by our restaurants,
Yeah.
for the big part.
So if we send the restaurants notification, old and new,
Yep,
this goes out for review to them.
That's
You
easy
wanna
enough.
participate, we'll meet with you.
exactly.
That's right. And that, okay, and that's what I'm
But
saying.
this is
Also-
probably what it's gonna be.
Right.
But in all fairness, they all have to get it at the same time.
And that was my intent of having a meeting, have a little get-together,
Yes.
little coffee, donuts, talk about it, here's the, and we all talk about, discuss it.
agree.
And,
I agree.
and that's what that's what I was asking. Let's set that up and just discuss it.
Can,
So Jim, if,
can Rebecca get a list of all
July's not a
the
good
restaurants for
time.
us?
We
what
have,
would,
And
what,
as
what,
you do,
what time would
okay.
you
Yes.
suggest? What would be a
Yes.
good
Let's
time, since
do a
you're in the
mailing to them.
business?
that's what we're thinking. Invite him to this and let's have
September,
a
October.
presentation.
Okay,
Yep.
It's a slower time period in the rest.
He's-
July and August,
It's terrible.
so
I know.
Jim suggests September
We
or
just-
October for the meeting.
September, October?
Sure.
I was just throwing it out there. I just want to get it done.
Yep.
And so, would we agree that we want a mailing of this to go out, maybe in August before the meeting, and an invite to the meeting and say, this was adopted in July, August of 2014, so we're actually a year later, however, we want to make sure that everyone is understanding, and we want to give you time to get into it and whatever else.
Yeah, send them a copy of it and tell them we're gonna have a public forum for them to come in with the input.
Right.
I would send a notification out now,
Okay,
just to warn them that this is coming up, and that we will be holding a meeting in September,
September,
October.
yeah,
Mhm.
so just
For
a,
everybody, give them a chance to go over the thing, and let them come up with their complaints,
the
their
notification
pros,
and the
their
pub-
cons, their changes,
Yeah.
or whatever, and then we'll meet on X date,
Yes.
and just send them out a brief reminder at that point.
okay, so,
And I want to emphasize, they do know, because the plumbing code, when they set the restaurant, requires an internal grease trap, and they're educated on grease, and they're supposed to be pumped weekly and monthly, and that's provided. Whether they pay attention to it, whether they absorb it or not, I can't speak to, but they're provided, the plumber code. So when you go down and pull that permit, the plumber says, you need to do this in your restaurant. That's just the way it is.
You assume the plumber says that.
Well, I've been present when the plumber has said it, I've been present when people have been told.
He said,
Do you know what I mean? So that's part of the process. Now, again, whether they absorb it, whether they get it, I don't know. I can't speak to that. I really can't. But again, it's an impact to the sewer
Well, I
system.
guess all I'm suggesting is if we're gonna put in a policy, regardless of what it is, it's gonna impact businesses regardless of what they are,
Mhm.
then I think it's incumbent upon us to know, not assume, but know that these people have got the information, they have had a
Mhm.
chance to input on it, and if they choose not to, we know that they definitively have been informed.
We can have them sign off that they received the
Yeah,
policy.
Exactly. I mean, there's,
That way they've got nothing to fall back on.
I just
Okay.
think
Send it registered.
that way you get out of the hassles later on down the road someplace, because this way, everybody is aware, everybody knows, everybody signs off, you explain to them in enormous detail what really has to be done. I mean, the first thing I looked at was that
Fell
they
the
gotta
right
keep a
way.
log. Well, okay, fine, keep a log. What are you gonna do with the log?
The log is there to be inspected by the Board of Health or the sewer department anytime to make sure that they're
And
following the
have you been around on
policies.
some of these inspections?
I'm sorry?
Have you been around on any of the health inspections?
A couple. I've been also around kitchens in this town where they've had backup into the kitchen, into the parking lot because they're not pumping their grease
Yeah.
trap.
Oh,
I've been on both
absolutely.
ends. I've been on both ends of
Absolutely.
it.
I think the requirement to have a hauler pump it, that's a contract that can be submitted when they apply for their license, their business license on an annual basis. Part of the requirement with the business license is to submit the contract, a copy of the contract with the hauler who was gonna do the grease pickup.
Exactly.
We were trying to tie it in, into the Board of Health does an annual inspection. So part of that inspection would be make sure that they had, because there has to be teeth to the policy also.
If it's tied in with the business license, they don't open without it.
Okay.
Real simple.
And that would be through the building or through
The
the,
Board of Health makes the inspection.
yeah, who's that, the license, speaking of the license, so that'd be through the Board of Selectmen. So the Board of Selectmen would have to be informed that this is our policy, and that if they don't have that, then they can't issue the license?
They have so many other requirements that
Mhm.
you have to,
Mhm.
hoops you have to jump through to get a license.
I understand. Okay.
Yeah, this makes it easier for you.
Yeah,
Yeah, it does. That's why I was going to the Board of Health,
It's a
because
good
they have
idea.
authority. That's why I was going, but yes, absolutely.
It takes the liability away, some of it.
It's an automatic. I mean, you have to meet certain criteria right down the list.
you don't renew your license to drive a car unless you paid all your tickets.
Yeah,
That's
Same
right.
thing.
yeah, same thing, it's a good idea.
Absolutely. It's a hook.
It's just, you know, let's keep this thing simple.
Yeah,
That's all
exactly,
I'm saying.
exactly.
There's no reason to get into hats, horns, and whistles when it's not necessary.
All right, so do you want to, the notification that we're gonna send out that this is coming out, or do you wanna send this entire thing out with that notification?
Send out the notification and the entire package for them to review. And
Okay.
then they
Immediately,
can-
almost.
So-
Immediately
I would
for,
have to assume.
send this out now for
Yeah.
future date.
I would have to assume, you know, being the glass half full,
Mhm.
as you must assume, is that if they get some of them, if they get something like this, they'll see some of the things on it. They'll just do it. There won't be an
The
issue.
responsible people will.
I agree.
There's gonna be some that won't, there's some you're gonna have to chase, and I understand that, but majority of them pretty much will probably do it
Right.
without having to go through hoops.
But we are also gonna have to send a letter along with this explaining that we are not enforcing this.
Right,
Right.
at this point.
Once,
Right.
if we
Yeah,
get to
right.
this
Until we
motion,
have the
Right.
meeting.
we have this, that, until we have the meeting
Yeah, I
in
think-
September.
I think it's only fair for both of us.
Just like you
Exactly.
said, Mary, it was adopted on such and such a date,
that-
hasn't been enforced, it's not enforceable till we meet on it.
Okay.
And that will also give us an opportunity
They'll
to
like
go
that.
back through this and look
Yeah.
at the item in here about having a contract with a pumper.
Yeah.
Wherever it says that. Anyhow, is to get with the selectmen and work it out with the business license.
And that's something we can discuss when
And
we
we
meet,
can add into this.
add an amendment and
Mhm.
So do we need a motion?
vote
We,
on it.
we need a,
The motion is to, take this grease, send out a letter to every, restaurant.
food
and
service.
food ser- and informing them of a policy that was adopted on such and such a date. However, it has not been has not been
Implemented.
implemented, thank you for that word. It was adopted July 8th, 2014, however, it hasn't been implemented, and we're looking for them to review it and meet with us in the early fall to finalize it. That's what is that what I want to say?
Yeah, date to be determined.
Okay, what?
The
Date to be determined,
Okay.
at early fall.
So,
So we need a second on that. Do you,
I just want to change the word review, because review to me invites people to change something.
Okay.
So,
Fine.
huh?
You wanna tweak it, and we'll review it next time we get together?
No, we will, but I just, in terms
You
of
don't
the,
want them to review
I don't
it.
want
Right.
them to come in and go, well, I don't like
Okay.
this and I don't like
Okay, how
that.
about,
So that's all, that was the only reason I just wouldn't second that one. I just have, if you say, here, review this, to me, that means then tell me what you
like and don't
don't
like,
like
you
and
can
don't like.
discard,
So I'm just
and
trying to
then-
think of
Yeah,
another
yeah.
word for review.
Discuss.
we can discuss it,
Well, you want the restaurant owners to read
read it, yeah,
and.
Be aware.
Be aware.
be aware.
How's that?
That's
Be
fine.
aware.
We're including the policy for you to read and be aware of. How's that? We are providing the policy, so the motion would be to send this out to the restaurant owners with a letter stating,
Any food service.
any food
because-
service that says this was adopted in 2014, we would like you to read it and be aware of it, and we're gonna have a meeting in September to go over it and invite your comments,
There you go.
but that it's not gonna be reviewed to say, well, we don't like
No,
that,
no,
we
no,
don't like this.
we're not gonna let them
Okay,
review it,
okay.
no, you have their comments, I agree.
Okay.
You know, in essence, you're gonna let them review it.
We are,
So
but
they're gonna
we-
come
we
up with
have a
some
little bit
comments that are
more.
Realistic, that we're not.
That's correct, but,
Yeah.
Changing.
right,
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
yeah.
I
You don't-
agree.
You don't wanna be automatically, say, well, I'm hacking that out and hacking that out, if I say, here, review this for me, would you please?
Okay,
All right. So
so
can
now
you
we
read
have the motion.
Sure. The motion is to contact restaurant and food service facilities to send a letter informing them of the policy that was adopted by the Board of Selectmen on July 18th, 2014,
But not enforced.
but it is not enforced as of yet. We would like them to read and be aware of the policy. We were gonna have an informational meeting to follow up in September. Informational meeting and discussion to follow up in September. So,
And we could probably look to implement it on October 1st.
yeah, with the discussion of implementation
Yeah.
later on, okay? So, that's a motion.
I second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Five,
Does
0.
that work for you, Guy?
Absolutely. My goal is just to get the grease out of the lines.
Yep.
Right.
That's all I care about.
Yep.
There's a lot of grease in the lines,
Yep.
and we just gotta
Okay.
get it out, that's all. So how will we do
Good.
it? Thank you. However we do it, I really appreciate it.
I have one question to Priscilla. What's happened with that? Is it, did they sign the contract?
It's number 5 on my list, but
Oh,
I'll
all right,
jump
I'll
out of
shut up
order.
then.
No, I'll go get right on it.
Nope.
Priscilla, contract is signed. They have their first payment, and they're coming up next week to meet with us to go over where we're gonna put it, how we're gonna do it. So the actual production meeting will be next week.
Okay.
All right, so we're pretty excited about that. It's been a long haul. And then, once they leave that meeting, they go back, they're actually, right now, constructing. It's made to order. And so it's about an 8-week build. And when they're completed with building, then they'll bring it down and install it. So that, it's a done deal.
So it should be ready for October.
Right.
Yes, ready for October, yes, I'm looking forward to it. And you all know what resealing is, because it's a good opportunity to lessen the impact. And also it gives the restaurant owners a viable place to take their grease. You know, and that's something that in Massachusetts in general, that's an issue. There's no place to go with it. So, okay, I was gonna talk about the basement, but we've already done that. And I sent an updated, I believe I had your email, the only one, Madam Chairman. Also, the sewer commissioners at wareham.ma.us is active.
Okay, let me see that. Sewer commissioners.
Sewer commissioners at wareham.ma.us
MA.US.
is active,
Sewer commissioners, okay.
so you can access it. Now, what
Is there a
Matt,
password or anything like that? that we
nope,
have
you
to-
just access it and it's
Go right
open.
to it.
Just go right, you can see all the emails.
Okay.
Now, what Matt has asked for you folks, if you open it up and you erased it, that means nobody else can see it. So what he's asking is he can take that, when they email that address, if you would like, he can forward it to your personal email, and there'll be no tracking of that.
Dot
So in
US.
other words, whatever you had, say you had a personal email, whatever email you wanted, when they email that, it would be forwarded to each individual
MA.
at the email you choose. So the public will have a place to go that will be distributed to you folks. So if you'd like to do that, then I will tell them that that's what we'd like to do, if you'd
So
like.
this sewer commissioners at
Becca can
wareham.mass.us,
send you an
the
email.
public can put it there, their questions, whatever.
Correct.
Then when we go into it, we'll forward it to our own private, or
No,
we'll get Matt.
Well, Matt wants to do it automatically. So in other words, let's say that you go, right, let's say you went home and you went on that, and you went into that email. And you saw, okay, I'm all done, and you erased it, no one else can see it.
Oh,
So you don't erase anything. So he said either you have one common eraser, give everybody a week and say, okay, a time frame to look at the emails, and then every 2 weeks they're all erased. Or he said, when they email that address, he can have it automatically forwarded to any address you want. And then so you'll have it, and you don't have to erase it or can erase it, do whatever you want with
I don't
it.
like to erase my emails when it comes to boards that I'm on.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying.
For further
all right, so we all
reference.
know we don't erase anything, how's
Yeah, we
that?
won't erase.
So just leave it. That's, just don't erase it, leave
We
it.
won't
You don't-
erase,
you
but
don't
we
have my
also would like
company
him to
email
forward
because
them.
You can't get rid of
Because
anything.
I was gonna say, can't the public erase something then?
Seriously,
Yeah.
Really?
Only the
it's all
the
archived.
email address, they can mail to it, but they can't enter it to erase it, to do anything with it. So once
I
they
can
email
find
that
stuff
address, you
from
have
4
the,
years
you
ago,
have the
no
ability to go
problem.
in there and take it out, take out the
Exchange, Microsoft.
information.
Okay.
And so I'll clarify with Matt, but he said to me, and that's why I want to ask, he said you can have it when the public emails that, whatever you want, they can email it to your personal email, and no one has to see that transaction, but because this is the only one they can get into, but it'll come to you, and then you can manage it the way you choose.
Okay.
So it's
And
like
that's-
it's like call forwarding.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
And you forward to
exactly,
whatever you
call for it,
choose.
yeah.
And that way there's one address, they don't have to have your address, your address, your address, but they can have the Wareham Sewer Commissioners
That's
dot Wareham.ma.
That's great.
And then when they email that, they type in, okay, Mr. I'd like this. It'd be forwarded to all of you where you want it to go.
Mhm.
And so
Right.
each one you can
Do we
manage
have,
your own
I'm
individual.
surprised the town doesn't
will,
use
with,
that, because-
with the email addresses that Rebecca already has, can we give those to Matt for
Yes.
forwarding?
And you can
Yeah,
forward
And
everything
that's
to
the
that,
way to
yes,
do it, and
yes.
then we don't
That's
have to
fine.
be going
Yes.
into
Great.
several.
And then you don't
different-
have to bother anything, because now the public has that address, and you all get you all get
Right, that's a
individually,
good
and you
idea,
can manage it any way you
especially-
want.
Exactly.
That's good.
That's the way I like it.
Okay, I'll have that
Keep it
done then.
simple.
Yes, and that, to me, it's, you don't have to worry about racing something in you, and, you know what I mean? You just, everybody's,
Right.
okay, that's what I'll do. I'll tell Matt that,
Okay.
okay. Abatements, we've got a few, do you wanna do abatements as they come in, or do you want just one meeting for abatements?
What about monthly? How's that work for you?
I'm sorry?
What about doing them monthly?
That's, whatever you want, it doesn't matter to me. Because once a month, you can prepare them all.
Yeah.
or whatever, it makes
That
it
way
easier
it's
for the
not-
staff.
yeah, exactly.
Because she, I mean, she's just,
No, I know.
she just goes and says, if I can minimize the impact to her, I would
Yep.
like, I'd like to do it like once a month would make it easier.
Right.
Okay.
I appreciate
once a
that.
month.
Okay.
Do we have to make a motion to that effect?
I don't think so, because it's not a formal thing that
Okay.
he's.
Well, it's a policy though.
Yeah.
Well, it is, yeah, you're absolutely
It's
right.
policy that we're gonna set, so
I
if
make
a
a
town, if a
motion.
town person makes an abatement,
Yep,
then.
I make a motion that, the sewer commissioners review and, decide on abatements
Last-
First-
monthly.
Last meeting of the month,
Last meeting of the month, that's
Okay.
fine.
Sure.
and we got a set date.
Okay, any discussion?
Seconded? Oh,
Any-
sorry.
He did.
Second.
Oh,
Oh, I
sorry.
thought you did.
Any discussion? That's good with everyone?
Yep.
Okay, all those in favor of
Aye.
having
Aye.
500?
Sure. So
And
that's
if
just
it's-
our abatement evaluation policy.
Policy.
That's not our abatement policy.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly.
Correct.
Just want to clarify that.
There's an abatement policy, we'll give it to you, that what
Mm-hmm.
we have, and you can do anything you want with it. You can add to it, because there's gotta be a policy,
Mm-hmm.
you'll have to decide. Because abatements, there's specific reasons for abatements. We kind of, and I'll just give you, do what you want, I'm not gonna,
Right.
but
No,
there's,
no.
there's reasons for everything, and that's all I'm saying, so.
Well, will Rebecca be, if Rebecca would send us, or you would send
Send
us?
them to us like a week prior that we
Yeah,
can
we
review.
Yes.
usually have them a week in
What we would do is
advance
she would,
anyway.
we'd formalize it, it comes in, the process is that the homeowner calls for an abatement, we send them on an abatement package. They fill out the abatement package with all the supporting documents.
Mm-hmm.
It comes to us, we apply the policy, and we say yes or no per policy, bring it to you folks under recommendation to it be policy, and then you make a decision whatever you wanna do with it. That's how it works, and so once we get it to that point, we'll forward it to you, because you know that the end of the month is your meeting, we'll forward them to you, so you can
Okay.
review them, end of the month, you'll have them all, and then you
Okay.
can decide on which, because you have plenty of time to think about questions, go down the trail,
Right.
ask questions,
Right.
whatever, and then when
Right.
it comes decision time, you'll have all the information you need to make the decision that you feel best, absolutely. So give you plenty of time to digest it. I think it's fair, because it's unfair to ask you to make a decision on something that's the last minute, it would be
Right,
unfair.
we need to have it as.
You gotta have
far
time
in
to digest it,
advance as
ask
possible.
questions, talk
Mhm.
about it, absolutely, I agree.
Along that same line, is Ty and Bond going to send us a draft before they come ahead of us with that, with the figures that they've come, once they?
I'm gonna request everything they have to date, on paper, sent to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good.
Everything they have, everything to date. So that way you'll have all the meetings open, so you'll have that.
Huh?
Because
Yeah.
we have to really have that, maybe have that presentation again, because
Yes.
two of our members did not,
Well,
get to
we have
see
that scheduled, don't
I think we have them scheduled from
scheduled,
soup to
we?
nuts, so
We
I'll
have
have
Ty
them.
and Bond to be scheduled.
But they're talking 3 weeks for this capital improvement plan, and Ty and Bond,
Aren't they scheduled on the 21st? Or is that
no,
CM Power?
that's C-Power.
We have Ty and Bond scheduled, I thought.
I thought we scheduled, I'm not sure when.
You did,
But
I'm pretty sure you
the-
did.
We can send the draft immediately to Ty and Bond. Because the draft is in form where they
Yep.
can, I think we get it immediately to Ty and Bond.
I thought I had in the,
We got one for the 21st,
It's CP Power.
That's the C-Power,
That's
and then
C-Power.
we have,
Yes.
GHD's coming back with coastal zone management for a presentation of the 93.
Yes, on the 4th.
And then
On the
we go all the
4th.
way into July. That's
July.
in June, I'm sorry, for the presentation. And then in July, we have CMZ draft and another CMZ presentation.
Okay,
So
so we
I
didn't schedule
can-
Ty and Bond.
So let's schedule time, well, you can schedule one, I'll get
Somewhere
the,
in between that, so that,
That would be the 26th. No, 20,
oh,
no, sorry, go to May.
21st,
So we have
28th.
28th, no, yeah, 28th.
But if 28th, we're going to be doing abatements.
How
do
many
they-
How long does
abatements?
that take?
they're pretty straightforward, especially if you get them ahead of time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
It's
approve
just
those, right.
publicly saying
Right.
yes, no,
Okay,
so I
so-
don't think it should take a lot of
Okay,
time.
So can we schedule Ty and Bond for May 28th then?
Yes,
That
I
gives him
can.
enough time if we send him now, that gives him 2 weeks to incorporate
Yes.
GHG's information and then come back to us with.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I emailed the ethics, I'm waiting to hear. And what I did is email it so I have a paper trail.
Okay.
And once I get the response, I'll turn it to the board as far as the ability to join Buzzards Bay Coalition.
Oh, okay.
So I emailed that to the ethics, and so when it comes back, I'll turn it over to the
Sure.
board and see what they. Last couple things I have, just briefly. We had talked about, tonight, about communication. And I presented this before, and I'm gonna present it again. There's a program called Granicus. It's an interactive website. It's about $200 a month. And what happens is we have a website for the treatment plant, and it's interactive between whoever you want it to be interactive and all your customers. So in other words, there's a website that you as a consumer for wastewater can go on that and actively get a question answered. Anytime something happens, it's a mass on the website that goes to the sewer, that all the sewer users have access to. So let's say tomorrow there was a meeting and you wanted everybody that was sewer user here, it'd go on the website. And then they would get, and you just communicate back and forth. And there's also, it follows up with mailings. And I want to at least get the information presented to the board, you time to digest it, because it allows, it's used throughout the country by government to communicate with public. And so to me, it's an interactive thing. You can put videos on there, you can put updates, you can put simple things, like for a water department, we're flushing, or we're gonna do some odor cleaning, or whatever the case may be. It's just interactive, it's just constantly, and they can actually communicate back and forth. And I think it's a good step in the communication, because it's any time of the day, they can wake up and go on there, and we can pick next morning. And it also has the ability to be live. You can talk immediately. So if you have a question on your bill or an abatement you'd like to get, you can do the website, and it's immediately get back out to you. I just think it's a good idea as far as communication with our consumers. And so I'd like to look into it further, present it to the board, and you can look at it and see what you think about it. But I think it's a step in the right direction to have open communication constantly.
Do we have a website set up now for the water pollution control facility? We
No.
do not, okay.
Yeah, that's why that's why I want a website. What we have is, you can go to the town's website and see all the different
Yeah.
departments.
Yeah.
And so you can't really go to the sewer department
No.
website. There's no website. So if there's a sewer department website, like the town has a website, so if they're doing something to town, it's on the website. You go and it's, okay, oh, they're collecting trash, whatever the case may be. If the sewer department had a website, then anybody can go on that website and all the information's there. You see, so and this has the ability to interact with the public.
Would it be integrated with the town's website, or this would be a separate
It'd
one?
be separate from the towns, it'd be the sewer department's website, interactive website for sewer users only. They'd have the access to that website, and they'd communicate back and forth. So, I mean, the criteria would, they obviously they'd have to have a computer. Maybe if they don't have a computer, then we have to find another way of mailings or whatever the case may be, or they could call. But this is just, so, in other words, it's updated constantly, so there's a flow of information we're all thinking about. It's just there, it's a constant flow of communication. And so there's no opportunity to miss something, unless you just don't go on. But everything's out there. It doesn't take away from the mailings, it doesn't take away from other things. And it's also education, like on your sewer, you can see that there's two sides to that flyer. We have a problem with rags, huge problem. We de-rag constantly. People flush baby wipes, adult wipes, they flush everything.
Yeah, that would be.
So on the website, there'd be a little video on why not to flush them. So it gives you the opportunity to educate the public also, as you pointed out, education. So it says, this is why we don't flush them. And we made a video, we put it on TV, I don't know how many saw it, but we actually went to the pump station, we pulled the pump, and it had a rag on it that was probably, without exaggeration, 10 feet, and we showed them us deragging it, taking the pump apart. That's a process of an hour and a half, and we're doing it constantly. So how do we educate the public, you see? So if there's interactive, there's a video there. We're gonna send that flyer in the building, we've given it out. The more we can educate the public, the more they can help us solve these issues because they're timely and costly. And they also ruin pumps because the pumps jam up, so we gotta replace pumps. So we need help, so how do we interact communication to have them help us solve these issues? Because they're the ones that can solve these issues for us. So the interactive website it goes a long ways to open the doors to have an open, honest communication back and forth. So I'd like to really seriously investigate a website for the sewer department. So anyways, if it's okay with
So
the board.
who was the company that you said was the?
Grenicus.
Grenicus?
Yes, I'll forward you the information, Grenicus. They're based out of, I believe it's San Francisco. And I gotta tell you, they're countrywide and they've had a great successful rate. And it's for all departments of government. The federal government uses it quite a bit and regular cities and towns. And it's just been an avenue or a medium that people are using to open the doors to communication. Everybody has a computer. That's a bad statement. But most people have computers. Most people surf the internet. Most people are on them. So you can go onto the website and you can actually find out what's going on. You can leave your comments. You can talk. And if it's on office hours, you can actively communicate back and forth on the web. So I just think it's a good idea. I'll forward you their website and you can go on there and see it.
Thank you. I think it's a great idea. I'd like to see if we could actually have a link through the town one though, because you figure if people are gonna go, they're gonna go to town first and then go someplace.
Yeah,
And then the only concern I had was,
Just get a note on that.
it sounded like it was kinda IM-y.
Website.
yeah.
It had the capacity to IM.
I'm sorry?
It sounds like it has the capacity for IMing, because you're like, well, somebody could go on there, ask a question.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm not sure who would monitor that IMing, and if they'd expect that, we run into this problem in communications at school, a parent shoots off an email at 11 o'clock at night, and they want to know why we didn't respond, till 9 o'clock the next morning when I have my prep time to be able to actually read my emails. So, if someone's on there IMing, so I'd love to be seeing the information, how, the Reticus might time things or time the flow.
Yeah, it's working hours for IM things.
Okay,
so
great.
Grenicus explained that to us. I can ask a question for giggles if there's a local person that can come and actually present it.
Okay, great.
Because I would like that also. But I know I'm dealing with the company out in San Francisco. Yeah, I believe it is. I'm not, California. And I'm dealing with them, and so this is by telephone, email, but I will ask the question. I'd like to have somebody sit down and explain to it in greater detail. But it's monitored. It's actually through their company, so it's monitored. There's do's and don'ts and everything, so
Okay, so there is an etiquette protocol and everything else.
It's updated, it's so you have somebody you're dealing with that's taking care of this site for you.
Okay.
It's not just, I couldn't do it.
Great.
My staff couldn't do it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, on us on a volunteer basis too, like,
No,
not gonna be
there's
IMing
no
it.
way.
Yeah.
So the $200 a month fee pays
For them to do
for
that.
all that. You're paying for the site and the maintenance of the site, and,
Yeah.
it just takes the burden off of us to actually do it, because trust me, I couldn't do it.
So so he's gonna send,
He'll send me the link and
I'll send you the
I'll
link
take a
and you
look
can-
through some of that, through what it looks like compared to a regular website
Yes,
maintenance.
and you can, because
And
you
then
probably know more about it than I, it'd
the
be good.
report.
There we go. Don't expect it for the next meeting.
good.
but, Yeah, I mean, a little while to investigate that.
And that's all I have. I think I had spoke to Jim about the other issue. We have, this is complicated, and I really don't want to get involved, but you need to know. In the development, these extensions that we did, contract 2, contract 1, there's so many houses that have these individual pump stations. The E1s, low-pressure systems. We've got 3 or 4 more to still put in. I think there's actually 4 that have to go in. We purchased them in 2009. A 5-year warranty came with that. The ones we're installing now are out of warranty. So we're actually going to give somebody something to install that has no warranty that we told them would have a 5-year warranty. In the past 6 months, we've replaced extra parts that we had at the plant. I called the supplier, and I want the warranty to be honored. You're out of warranty. You're on your own. So I've got to chase parts for the 4 or 5 that I have, plus the 5 I'm going to give to the customers. They have no warranty. So what I'm doing is I'm pursuing it for the town to get the town satisfaction. And I'm trying to ask them to open the warranty, extend it for those that we're gonna put in, because it's not their fault that they're gonna get rid of warranty. And they were told that they'd get a warranty when they were presented this policy of tying into sewer and using this E1, because they're too low to gravity. So I just have a concern with giving somebody something and saying you have no warranty. If it breaks tomorrow, you're on your own. And I don't know how to go about it, you see. So and literally, it's, bottom line is it's out of warranty, and it's really out of our hands. We can just walk away and say, it's not our problem. It's you, it's your problem, because they own it. We're just not giving a warranty with it. And I'm not comfortable with that, but it is what it is. It's not their fault that we purchased it in 2009 in bulk.
Well, maybe we should warranty it for 5 years. That's what I would say.
I want your input, because
How many, you said 5?
there's 5 that we have to install that are gonna have no warranty.
And
And
they've
how-
already been purchased by the,
We own them.
Right.
We purchased them, we give them to the
Oh, it's gonna
homeowner.
be a discount.
And we were gonna give them to the homeowner who takes responsibility of them with a
Because they
5-year
own it,
warranty. So at least for 5 years, if the pump went down, they can get a replacement pump. If the float went, they can get a new float. If the check valve went, so that was the idea. Because the warranty expired, we're gonna give them these pumps with no warranty.
But the pumps have not been used
Nothing's been used.
yet, so, in the 5-year warranty, so you could still look at the fact that they're gonna go in and still have kind of a 5-year life if they have a
Correct.
5-year warranty. So what would the cost of, let's say, one new pump be?
$300, $400.
Okay, so would it be beneficial, I mean, I have to do this with a set of blinds I have at home because of the warranty, so basically I bought one new blind and I scavenged the parts out of the old ones and go ahead, keep switching them around until I have to go buy another one. Is
Right.
that an option of spending $600 and buying 2 new pumps and keeping 2 of the old ones for parts for the other 3 that might break?
Sadly to tell you is we've been doing that with the ones that we had for spares for us.
Okay,
We've done that. They were ours for if something happened. We've done that with our pumps. So now we have all systems that are junk, and we're trying to get ours rectified. The towns, we own them, and so because we didn't want the consumer to suffer, we'll give this consumer one of our pumps. We gave this consumer one of our floats. We gave them one of our,
so are we talking about $1,500 though to buy 5 new pumps then?
Absolutely. You see, and to have them for us.
And then you'll have 5 spares in order to pull the ones that you need to,
To keep the other people happy.
Keep the other ones, keep the
Running.
5 spares.
keep the
Yes.
5 spares and spend the $1,500 on 5 new pumps.
Because, I mean, I just feel bad for the people that are,
I agree with you,
that I
that's,
just,
right.
I think we should take care of them.
Just do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
all right,
Then
yeah,
that's-
I need
that's
a
a
motion.
That just seems,
Oh, hold on, when we get these 5 new pumps, are we gonna put them in right away, or? are we-
No, we're gonna keep them on the shelf.
No.
So these 5 people that are going, if they break, we'll give them one of the pumps. And then the 5 spares we have, we own them. We can do anything we want with them, because we have 5 spares.
But the 5 new ones that we're getting, we're gonna give them to the homeowners with the warranty, right?
No,
Am I missing something?
Yeah,
yeah, you are, I
think-
think,
yeah,
let me
yeah.
explain it properly.
okay.
Okay,
Okay, we have 5 pumps that are good, we're gonna give to the homeowners, the 5 that are left.
They have warranties left on them?
They have no warranties.
Okay, great.
There's no warranties.
Okay,
They haven't put them in yet, because they, again, and it's, part of me says it's, they have not abided by the 1-year tie-in policy. I don't wanna penalize them for that,
Right.
that's not what this is about.
Right.
So we've sent letters that you need to connect, so when they connect, we're gonna give them pumps without warranties. That's straightforward. And the warranty ran out in 2013, they ran out a couple of years ago.
Okay, we've got 5 pumps, we're gonna be putting them into homeowners, there's no warranties, we'll cover them for the 5 years. We don't need to buy any pumps unless you need additional
What's
pumps.
the say-
Until such time as one of those pumps crashes
But-
within a warranty
but-
timeframe,
but-
and then they're.
but-
I wanna make sure, and I'll ask that question about availability, I'll ask, because
Right.
if somebody has a problem, I don't have it there,
right, they,
it's-
it's a-
right, they,
it's a
their
lag
house is
time.
backed
You have
up.
to have
I have to have
You
stock
have
to
to have
give, you know what I mean?
something.
Because I have 5 spares that I've used already, for
Right.
other folks that have had problems,
Right.
that they have no warranty. So the
Right,
spares I have are already out.
right, you need
So I
something
have
on
no
the shelf.
spares.
Can
None
I,
whatsoever.
can I,
Yeah, so that's,
Can I ask why
You
the-
don't need 5 spares.
if we're buying 5 new ones, why don't we just give those to the homeowners?
that's what I was saying.
With a,
they're gonna get new ones to begin with.
right,
That has a 5-year
So
warranty,
let me
though.
clarify, 5 that we're gonna give to homeowners, 5 that we already own that we've given to previous homeowners who've had failures.
We've got that.
mhm,
Okay, so they're gonna get brand new pumps. If they fail, I need at least a pump to give somebody. Because the
Right.
5 that we have for spares are already gone
Right.
to other folks. And what I'm trying to pursue is I'm trying to get the company to give me these 5 for nothing, because I feel they owe it to us. It's not the town's fault that that's my belief, that it's out of warranty, because the warranty should have started the day it
You
was
installed
installed.
it, installed it, that's
But
correct.
they
Exactly.
did-
That's
But
correct.
what I'm saying
Yes,
is buy 5
Yes, that's
new
what I'm doing,
ones
yes.
and put the 5 new ones in the house and keep the 5 old
Yes,
ones
okay,
that the
that's what I'm
warranties
saying,
have
yes.
gone, and for parts.
yes, absolutely, that, I agree with
So
you.
now we're on
Right,
the same
that's-
page.
Yes, we
That's
are.
what I, that's me too.
That's
That's why I
Because
was with you on
actually,
that
there's
one, too.
10, as soon as when you look at it, it's actually 10.
I
5
was-
and
yeah,
5, that's
and
what
that
I'm
was
saying,
my-
it's 5 that.
Give, give the people the new ones with
Absolutely.
the
With the
5-year
warranty.
warranty.
That's
Yep.
right. Well, wait a
And
minute,
keep
the 5, if I buy a new one, I'm buying just a pump. The pump's not warranted, because we bought the warranty, see, maybe,
Okay.
when we bought this system, we bought a 5-year warranty to give to the home. There's no warranty,
But even if you buy a new pump, it's not gonna have a warranty?
If you buy 5 new ones, you don't get a warranty?
not with the pump, because the system was warranted, a
Oh.
5-year warranty on the system.
So then give them the old ones, and if something fails, you'll have a
Then I'll
couple
have a
pumps.
backup for 'em.
So buy 2 pumps to keep on the
You know what
shelf,
I'm saying?
if that's okay, so
I
there's
just wanna
parts.
know who's on first.
Yeah, I got it.
I don't know,
The sys-
that's, I wanna know
The
that
whole
one.
system installation is what's warranted, not just the pump itself.
Not just the pump, everything's
Okay,
warranted.
so that was the
The
part we missed
warranty,
to begin with.
yes, the control panel's warranted,
Right.
the box is warranted.
But the parts, the pump parts are what usually fails.
That's right. Everything's warranted. We have no warranty for them. If the control panel fails, then I gotta replace the control panel.
What are
You see, because
they,
that's
how often
warranted.
has that happened?
We've only seen 2 go so
So
far.
the pump parts fail more frequently, and if you buy a single pump, you don't get
It
a
should be
complete
fine.
warranty.
My
Okay.
pump's gonna fail real soon.
The way we're going, the way we're going. And that's all I have.
Do we need to
Um,
So
make
we
a-
need to make a motion that we
How
buy
many-
5 new pumps.
Well, we could say we could buy 2. We
Oh,
could
what?
buy 2
All
to
right,
have
so
spare
whatever,
parts in
whatever
case
the
something
board-
fails in the meantime.
Yeah.
I agree.
Always
Okay.
keep, how about we make a motion that we have 2 spare pumps at all times on the shelf
Disposable item.
Right.
for stock?
Okay, I
Right.
need a second.
Either that or we need a new pump for each
Just
one of
second
us.
and be quiet. Would you please just second it and be quiet?
Second.
Thank you.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm gonna get you a gavel.
We are now getting 2 new pumps. Now, so, Mr. Campina, thank you very much, and thank you for
All this,
all the work you did this
and
week.
Rebecca, thank you as
Do you
well.
want to clarify what kind of pumps those were? Low flow, low gravity,
I have
low
one
pressure
other
for
thing,
pressure
one
for
more
people
quick
below
thing,
gravity.
And then we'll do it.
Did you get the bills?
Oh, wait a minute, one quick little thing. On
Excellent.
unfinished business, I want to,
I set that up yesterday.
the May 2nd meeting, we have those notes, and we've already had them read to us last week, so I need a motion to accept the May 2nd.
So moved. Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's done. Any new business, anybody wants to talk about anything?
I'm talked out.
Somebody forgot the coffee.
Okay, the next meeting is scheduled for the 21st. At that point, we will have C-Power, the demand response proposal. Mr. Chris Landers is going to give us a proposal on that. We got that paperwork last week. So that's the demand response proposal about the brownouts when the electricity is low and so forth. He'll be there. The meeting will be at 6:30 here again at the same place,
So next week.
next week,
Okay.
the 21st.
Okay.
Can I have a
Make a
motion?
motion, we adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Done.
Are we still on for Monday morning at 8 o'clock at the
Oh.
sewer plant?